pemvaksinan untuk mencapai herd community, dan saya rasa perlu kita bincangkan pasal apa ni, mungkin kita boleh keluar paper ataupun buku berkenaan dengan pengalaman di universiti, Pak.
Yeah, baik. A good idea, Pak.
Yes, it's true.
One about your idea. We can
relate
and we can share our experience on COVID-19.
Yes, it's true. And this is very important because it changed our new trend, especially in the when talking about the teaching and learning. Particularly, we're talking about the future of our graduate students. Now, also we have discussions in ourselves among OSH practitioners in Malaysia. What happened to OSH in industry, especially the graduates from the university who are taking the OSH program after they finish their study. What happened to them, their perspective, because most industry still try to re-emerge again, because during COVID about 1 year, certain sector has been closed out, so it's very tough for the students. But luckily, because new incentive in Malaysia, especially for the OSH sector, is tremendously surprised, because it have minimal impact to the pathway of the student who are taking the OSH in Malaysia. Ada Pak dosen-dosen yang lain macam Pak Rifai, Pak Samsul, ada lagi Pak Widodo?
Oh ya, saya share.
Nanti kirim salam pada mereka ya Pak.
I will share the link to them.
Bapak sepanjang di setahun ni Bapak bekerja setiap hari di kantor ataupun work from home?
Fully work from home. And
okay, good. Same like me.
Also in the semesters. Full online learning.
Full online. Okay.
Because we are under Muhammadiyah.
Okay.
So, in Muhammadiyah, it's recommended that until this semesters we full conduct online, because the case is increasing, not flattened.
It's true. Even though in our OSH training provider like NIOSH and others private training center who are offer the OSH program competency for the Malaysian and international, they also use the online system. But there is certain thing, for example, the courses of working at height in the petroleums and others that related need to be conducted practically. They have to do practical face to face, but they have to abide strictly in the SOP of the COVID.
Okay, Dr. Azwan. It's 8 o'clock, and I think we can start the guest lecture.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Selamat pagi. Khususnya saya ucapkan ribuan terima kasih. My utmost grateful and alhamdulillah to Universiti Ahmad Dahlan, particularly Fakultas Kesihatan Masyarakat, Pak Otomi, Dekan, Ibu Lina dan rakan-rakan serta yang saya hormati pelajar-pelajar S1, K3 Kesihatan Pekerjaan. I'm very eager to meet you and have opportunity given by Pak Otomi to me, and I'm very honored on that to talk menjadi sebagai tamu kuliah on the risk assessment and risk management, particularly in occupational safety and health. Well, before that, Pak Otomi gave me a topic on risk management in OSH, but I'm thinking about because the risk management cannot be left without the most important elements in how you identify and manage or control the hazard in the workplace, is the risk assessment. Because risk assessment, if you are not familiar, if you not well understood, or you are not keen know what is risk assessment, you cannot make management, proper management, how to control the hazards or accident that arise in the workplaces. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, wait. I have impact courses, but I have to. Okay, that's good. Okay. Sorry for the interruptions. Well, that's why the risk assessment is the part and parcel when you want to suggest or manage the control or manage the hazard that arise or emerging in the workplaces. Let me share my PowerPoint presentations. I think Pak Otomi already gave to the students the note slides of my presentations, and also there is one PDF talking about the guideline for the hazard identification, risk assessment, and the risk control hierarchy that endorsed by our Department of OSH Malaysia. This is the standard for the OSH practitioner to identify the hazard that arise in the workplaces, how to assess the risks that occur in the workplaces, and how to manage all kind of significant risks that occur in the workplaces to control it and have a logical, practical recommendations in the workplaces. So this is very compulsory because when the inspector from the Department of OSH Malaysia visits or examine the industry in the workplaces, one of the main criteria they are looking at is the hierarchy. They will ask for the OSH practitioner, particularly in Malaysia, we call certified or registered safety and health officers. Okay, where are your document on the hierarchies? Because this is very important. For those who are not doing the hierarchy in the workplaces, they can be penalized by the DOSH up to 50,000 ringgit Malaysia. So this is very heavy punishment. In fact, this year, our parliament already discussed and hopefully will be gazetted a new amendment in the Occupational Safety and Health Act 1994 to might be OSHA 2000s. This is very stringent regulation in OSH. And
sorry for interrupting.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I need some translation for my students before. Yeah. Before I will introduce you first. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay, it's okay. No problem.
Yeah, no problems. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, we would like to express our gratitude to Allah due to His favor and charity, so that we can carry out this morning guest lecture. Blessing and salutation be upon our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his family, and those who follow him in goodness till the day of the judgment. Okay. First of all, on behalf the Dean Faculty of Public Health, Ibu Lina Handayani, Dr. Azwan, she says sorry because she has another meeting, so she cannot attend our guest lectures. we would like to express our sincere thanks and appreciation for Dr. Azwan, who taking his time to share his knowledge and experience about occupational safety and health risk management for all of us. Dr. Azwan is a lecturer in Faculty of Mechanical and Manufacturing Technology in University Technical Malaysia Melaka. Before, he is a director of OSHA. OSHA is Direktur K3 in UTM. Yeah. 3 years ago, yeah, three of our students, Acha, Rifa, and Susan, yeah, Tech Apprentice Program in UTM. Yeah, and also I've visited with the students to UTM. Three of our students take an apprentice program for 1 month in UTM Melaka, guided by Dr. Azwan. Yeah. Okay. It is. I think it's for the preamble, for the opening, and the next guest lecture will be delivered by Dr. Azwan. Dr. Azwan, the time is yours.
Okay. Thank you apa ni Pak Otomi. Assalamualaikum. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilma warzuqni fahma. Allahumma yassir wa la tu'assir. Thank you apa ni Pak Otomi. And my honors to the students of the Kesihatan Pekerjaan. Okay, let me share my presentations in order you to understand what I'm talking about, especially in the risk assessment and the risk management. Okay, this is very important subject topic as the OSH practitioner like you. Inshallah, you'll be graduated to become the OSH practitioner, and one of the elements to ensure in your workplace is safe and healthy. We are talking about the risk assessment and how can you, from the risk assessment, how you manage properly, practically, in order to reduce accidents or zeroing the accident in the workplaces. This is the ultimate objective when you're talking about the occupational safety and health. Okay, let me first share with you. Okay. Oh, sorry. Saya ini tak ini. Saya share dulu. Once. Boleh nampak Pak ya?
Sudah,
di
Pak.
sini? Boleh ya?
Already.
Okay. Today we'll be talking about the basics in the occupational safety and health. Okay. On the risk assessment and risk management. Like I said before, this is two practice. The most important when you're talking about how can you reduce or zeroing accident in the workplaces. Okay, the learning objective of this Kuliah Tamu, first to define, hopefully at the end of this lecture, you can define what is the basic fundamental of the hazards, risk, and danger. This is very important, even though this very simple definition, but if you fail to understand the definition of hazards and risks, you become failure as the OSH practitioner. So this is very fundamental in the OSH in the workplaces that you need to know the definition of them. And the second, you're able to explain what is the risk management and risk assessment process. If you fail to understand or to explain evenly how can you do a procedure to do risk assessment and risk management, to the hazard in the workplace, you are unable to detect and manage properly the hazards that you handle or emerge in the workplaces, and the system of OSH will be fails in the workplaces. And the third one, you're able to describe the method how to identify the hazard. This is the first step on the process of the identify and manage the hazard in the workplaces. And later on, you need to able to use the risk assessment metric. In Malaysia, we are using the semi-quantitative method, 5x5 table. In fact, I already attached WhatsApp to Pak Otomi, and hopefully Pak Otomi can give to the students the proper guideline on the hazard identifications, risk assessment, and risk control, so-called we call HIRAC, to the student. And this is very general, and for in Malaysia, this is very mandatory for the OSH practitioner, particularly in the OSH safety and health officers in the workplaces. And the last one, hopefully you'll be able to explain, this is the risk management, hierarchy of control. When we're talking about the control or manage, it means you must be recommend the proper way, the proper solutions that can be accepted by your organization, by the employers, or can be accepted that this can be managed properly after you assess the risk in the workplaces. If you fail to understand these two topics, risk assessment and risk management, you cannot be a good in managing the incidents in the workplaces.
I will translate slide by slide. Dr. Azwar, please.
Yeah.
The previous slide, please.
Yes.
Tujuan dari pembelajaran pada hari ini yang pertama adalah untuk membedakan apa itu bahaya dan resiko. Ini adalah hal yang paling prinsipal ya dalam seorang ahli keselamatan dan kesehatan kerja untuk membedakan bahaya dan risiko. Kemudian yang kedua, tujuan dari pembelajaran ini bahwa kalian akan memahami proses manajemen risiko itu seperti apa. Kemudian yang ketiga adalah kalian memahami ya ada berbagai macam metode yang bisa dilakukan untuk mengidentifikasi bahaya. Kemudian yang keempat adalah kalian mampu menggunakan matriks risiko ya, ada berbagai macam, ada kualitatif, semi kuantitatif dan kuantitatif, dan yang terakhir adalah kemampuan untuk pengendalian bahaya. Ini adalah yang paling penting ya, bagaimana caranya untuk men-tackle atau mengendalikan bahaya-bahaya yang ada.
Ya, kalau saya cakap bahasa Melayu mereka boleh faham tak Pak? Ya Pak? Bapak dengar ya?
Ya Pak. Ya.
Kalau saya cakap bahasa Melayu mereka boleh faham? Ataupun saya continue in English?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, why we need to carry out the risk assessment? Kenapa kita perlu membuat penaksiran risiko? Assessment kita panggil penaksiran. Kalau penilaian tu evaluations. Penaksiran risiko. Ya, sebenarnya yang pertamanya, why we need to carry out the risk assessment? Because the legal requirement, I'm sorry to put B, but supposed to be A, legal requirement. Because seperti for example, if you been ditanya oleh Pak Polisi, contohnya adalah kamu naik mobil ya, tiba-tiba ditahan oleh Pak Polisi. Kamu akan kamu tanya, Pak, apa kesalahan yang saya telah buat? What the offense that had been done while driving the car, for example. Of course, Pak Polisi itu akan memberi peraturannya yang mana kamu menyalahi peraturan. Of course, this is for the legal requirement. Okay. For example, in Malaysia, there is two act that importance in Malaysia regarding in occupational safety and health. One is the Occupational Safety and Health Act 1994, and another one is Factory Machinery Act, Akta Kilang dan Jentera 1967. Okay. For example, in OSHA 1994, in section 15, there is indirectly mentioned the duty of the employer and self-employed to do risk assessment in the workplaces if there is a hazard that occur in their workplaces. And another one, under the OSHA 1994, under regulation of SEMA regulation, control of industrial major accident hazard, okay, you may refer this Malaysian Act in DOSH website, and also in the use regulations, use and standard exposure of chemical hazardous to health, what we call use regulation, especially risk management or chemical risk management. Okay, that required risk management should be done in the workplaces. Okay, another one, why we need to carry out the risk assessment, because this is the thing, logical and cost-effective management to the employer. Because if the accident or incident happen, it will damage to the property or might be injured persons in the workplaces. And also it might be have fatality in the workplaces. So it become more and more expensive to the employer to handle this. So that's why risk assessment is very important. And the last one, this is required in the OSH standards. For example, in Malaysia, we have MS 1722 for the OSH management system or standard. And the internationally for the IIO, we have OSAS or 80,000, and also for the quality ISO for the environment management system. Pak?
Ya, baik. Ya, itu tadi perbedaan bahasa ya Pak Azwan. Kalau di sini risk assessment itu penilaian risiko ya. Kalau di Malaysia mungkin penafsiran begitu ya.
Penafsiran ya.
Kami namanya penilaian risiko begitu Bapak.
Ya, kalau kita di sini kalau penilaian kita panggil evaluations.
Oh, okay. Kalau kami memang namanya IBPR, identifikasi bahaya.
Ya. Terus
risiko, begitu. Ya. Jadi kenapa sih harus melakukan penilaian risiko begitu ya? Penilaian risiko itu dilakukan karena aturan undang-undang ya. Ada aturan yang mewajibkan begitu ya. Nah, kalau di Malaysia ada beberapa aturan, itu adalah undang-undang ya. Ada undang-undang yang mewajibkan bahwa perusahaan itu yang memiliki potensi bahaya wajib melakukan keselamatan dan kesehatan kerja begitu. Selain itu juga, selain standar Malaysia juga ada standar internasional. Ya, ada standar MS 1722, OSAS. Kalau OSAS 18001 sekarang di Indonesia sudah menggunakan ISO 45001. Pak Azwan ya, yang terbaru menggunakan ISO 45001.
Ya, begitu juga sama kita.
Ya, silakan Pak, lanjut.
Ya. Okey. Bila kita nak carry out risk assessment ni should be carried out for what? Okay, maybe you said when the accident happened, then we use the risk assessment or try to manage. No, when we're talking about carry out the risk assessment, okay, there is several conditions that it might be carried out. First, either the work activity is routine or non-routine activity. What it mean routine activity? It means routine activity is the work that been done frequently, daily. For example, 5 days, contohnya 40 hours a week. These operations, this operator are doing quality inspections in semiconductor circuits. He spent about maybe 5 or 8 hours doing this work. This is what they call the routine inspection or routine activity. So this is one of the things that you also need to use the risk assessment. Non-routine activity, for example, like maintenance, breakdown. For example, there is a blackout or maintenance. Either this is unexpected maintenance or maintenance, where there is interruptions of the routine works, and there is sometimes maintenance to the repairing and replacing. This is also you need to do the risk assessment. Okay, and all kind of activity, not just for the employee, because there is something that we need to have outsourced. For example, contractor from the outside doing a work in our workplaces. Because in our policy, kalau di Indonesia dipanggil dasar, atau kita di sini polisi keselamatan dan kesihatan pekerjaan. Okay, OSH policy. The employer have to ensure safety, health, and the welfare of the employee, visitor, or somebody who are from the outside into our workplace. Sorry. That they must ensure that their safety, their health must be kept by the management. So we also need to do the risk assessment. And another one of the facility of in the workplaces. For example, if the contractor enter to our workplaces, okay, they are doing a job. For example, do commissioning installations on the air conditioning system, HVAC system, for example. They have to work working and hard. If they doesn't have any training, proper personal protective equipment, or permit to work, passport, there is a permit to work, PTW, we call here PTW, okay, that if we are not recognize it, or we are not aware of that, it might be potential incident rate will be happen in our workplaces. So this is the thing that we need to do the risk assessment in the workplaces. Okay, Bapak?
Ya, penilaian risiko itu dilakukan untuk kegiatan apa saja ya. Yang pertama itu adalah kegiatan baik yang rutin maupun yang tidak rutin. Yang rutin dilaksanakan dan tidak rutin. Yang tidak rutin contohnya apa? Misalnya maintenance atau pemeliharaan, ya, kemudian ada kerusakan dan lain sebagainya. Yang tidak rutin itu tetap harus dilakukan penilaian risiko. Kemudian yang kedua adalah semua aktivitas ya. Jadi tidak hanya untuk internal perusahaan saja, tetapi juga kepada kontraktor, subkontraktor, bahkan kepada tamu-tamu yang ada. Kemudian yang ketiga adalah fasilitas-fasilitas yang ada di tempat kerja, baik yang disediakan oleh perusahaan ataupun yang diadakan oleh kontraktor. Ya, tadi seperti dicontohkan oleh Pak Azwan bahwa ketika misalnya ada pekerjaan dari subkontraktor, ada bekerja di ketinggian, mereka harus ada PTW tadi ya, permit to work, yang artinya adalah ada sudah harus ada izin kerja sebelumnya.
Ya, terima kasih Bapak. Jadi bila kita tuh when to carry out the risk assessment, okay, there is three time or three occasion that we need to do risk assessment, either one or neither or. First, before operations, it means even though before the installations of new machines, or before we work, or the employee work in the workplaces, there is certain that we need to do some risk assessment. For example, new machine that install in our workplaces, or new tool. When we're talking about the operations, it might be machine, it might be from the human, a new employee who are not experienced, unskilled workers, a new process, a new chemicals, or whatever what we can consider can cause hazards or potentially can cause harm, injury, or damage to the property, we need to do risk assessment. And the second one is during the operations. While we do operation, the employee do a works, a task. It might be within the process, if they are not familiar, or maybe they do omission error or emission error. They forgot or they skip the work. The injured, it might be appears or re-emerge. So we need to do the risk assessment during the operation. And the last one, after operation, or the work has been ended or completed or executed, then we can do the risk assessment. Either we can do before, during, and after, or concurrently, or we do a next step, and the last step. When to review? Okay, after you do some risk assessment, okay, when we need to review the risk assessment? When there is accident occur. So maybe you are following the standards of safe operating procedure, but maybe some accident happened. Then it's very utmost important that you need to do risk assessment. Okay, even though, for example, maybe during this time you are using 100% concentration of alcohol, and for next month, the company use maybe 50% of the alcohol concentration on the, for example, rinsing or the equipment, for example, or maybe blend into the certain chemicals. Okay, there's two difference, even though the alcohol is the same, but concentration is very different. So maybe they have different what we call chemical safety data sheet, different procedure, standard operating procedure or safe operating procedure. Then you need to do the risk assessment. Or new employee come to do a works, or maybe the employee, for example, take leave, longer leave, 2 weeks or 1 month, for example, maybe a medical leave, for example, and we need to retrain. And this is also you need to do the risk assessment. Or you are replacing the equipment. Another one is external changes. For example, there is a new amendment, new law from the act in the OSH has been imposed in from the government, and the industry need to carry out, obey the regulation. Then this is you need to also to review the risk assessment. Ya, Bapak.
Ya, jadi kapan kita melaksanakan penilaian risiko? Ada 3 ya. Yang pertama itu sebelum adanya operasi atau sebelum dilaksanakan suatu pekerjaan. Kemudian yang kedua selama pekerjaan, dan yang ketiga setelah dilakukannya pekerjaan. Ya, misalnya kita mau memasang ada peralatan atau misalnya ada suatu mesin yang akan dipasang, sebelum dipasang dilakukan penilaian risiko terlebih dahulu. Gitu. Kemudian bahwa penilaian risiko itu bersifat tidak permanen ya, tapi harus ada review atau tinjauan ulang terhadap risiko yang sudah dilakukan. Lalu pertanyaannya, kapan kita melakukan peninjauan ulang dari penilaian risiko yang sudah kita lakukan? Yang pertama itu ada perubahan internal. Contohnya apa? Adanya modifikasi di dalam suatu site atau dalam suatu pabrik begitu ya. Kemudian perubahan dalam organisasi. Kemudian perubahan tadi misalnya konsentrasi kimianya berubah, atau misalnya ada perubahan pada pencampuran bahan kimia, kemudian ada perubahan mesin, atau termasuk juga misalnya ada perubahan pada prosedur-prosedur kerja. Jadi ketika ada perubahan yang terjadi di internal perusahaan, maka penilaian risiko yang sudah dilakukan itu wajib untuk direview atau ditinjau ulang kembali. Ya. Kemudian yang kedua, perubahan tinjauan ulang itu dilakukan jika ada perubahan dari luar. Contohnya apa? Misalnya ada amandemen dari undang-undang terkait dengan K3, begitu ada persyaratan yang harus dilakukan. Nah, itu harus disesuaikan dengan amandemen undang-undang tersebut. Maka harus dilakukan peninjauan ulang terhadap penilaian risiko. Kemudian berikutnya adalah perkembangan ilmu pengetahuan. Ya, ada sesuatu hal perkembangan ilmu pengetahuan, maka penilaian risiko kemudian juga harus ditinjau kembali.
And who will do a risk assessment? Of course, it must be a competent persons who are been trained to identify the hazards, and who are trained to assess the risk and able to manage or control the hazards has to be arise in the workplaces. So the key word is the experienced and trained workers or somebody. So we call that safety and health officers. It might be also from the others' expertise, for example, safety engineers. It might be from the chemists who are trained to do or expert to undergo the risk assessment or doing the hierarchy in the workplaces. So it might be trained. For example, like you, if you are graduated, okay, hopefully you will be graduated, and after you work in certain industry or department in OSH, you've been exposed, undergone certain training, because when we're talking about risk assessment, we are talking about either it is competent trained in industry or trained by certain OSH provider or OSH center that recognized from the government. For example, from the DOSH or NIOSH who are offered the training in Malaysia for the safety and health officers. It might be, for example, noise assessor who are expert in noise exposure to doing a high rack. So this is the person who are trained to do the risk assessment. Or might be you outsource from somebody or from the consultants. They are expert in this, and you are willing to do to pay them as for consultation to do a risk assessment. For example, if you have the system chemical exposure, you need to do the chemical assessment or local exhaust ventilation assessment. You need some expertise that recognized by the competency, by the government, for example. We have LEV assessor, what we call hygiene tech assessor level 1 and level 2 for the chemists, and for the local exhaust ventilation system, we have what we call the noise assessor and others. This is what we call the trained person who are able or competent to do the risk assessment in the workplaces. Ya, Bapak?
Ya, jadi siapa yang bisa melakukan penilaian risiko ini? Siapa ya? Jadi yang bisa melakukan adalah orang yang sudah kompeten, ya, orang yang sudah di training. Ya, kemudian kalau di Indonesia, Bapak, untuk yang dapat melakukan itu adalah safety officer, begitu. Yeah. Nah, mereka biasanya sudah harus mendapatkan sertifikat kompetensi dari BNSP, Badan Nasional Penanggulangan, Badan Nasional Sertifikasi Profesi, begitu. Ya. Yeah. Dan juga ada sertifikasi dari Ministry of Manpower, dari Kementerian Ketenagakerjaan Indonesia. Jadi orang-orang yang dapat melakukan identifikasi bahaya dan penilaian risiko adalah orang-orang yang berkompeten, ditunjukkan dengan sertifikat kompetensi yang dikeluarkan oleh BNSP atau Kementerian Tenaga Kerja, begitu. Kemudian selain itu bisa juga selain oleh internal perusahaan, bisa juga dengan konsultasi dengan konsultan yang ahli di bidang keselamatan dan kesehatan kerja.
Ya. Okay. This is the process or the basic component of the risk management. Okay. Basically, they should have 3 steps. First, what we call hazard identifications. Okay. The second step is the risk assessment. And the last method is the risk control, or what we call risk management. So the fourth is talking about the review. And we are already talking about the review, the control measures. Okay. 3 steps. You nak ingat mnemonic, we call HIRAC. Risk identification, HI. Risk assessment, RA. Risk control or risk management, we call RC. That we call HIRAC. Okay. It should be do step by step. You cannot skip doing the risk control first. No, you have to identify the hazards. You should know what are the hazards, and you able to expert whether these hazards, either from the physical hazard, biological hazards, chemical hazard, psychosocial hazards, ergonomic hazards, or environmental hazards. Because each hazard, there's a different step how to you assess and how you control the hazards that arise in the workplaces. So you need to know what are the hazards occur and whether the hazard are significant being accepted or not significant be accepted. Kalau not significant, it's very dangerous. Or accepted, it might be you can tolerate about this hazard. We are talking about later on. Okay, so 3 steps of the risk management. And this is called the basic component that you need to know, Bapak.
Ya, jadi apa komponen-komponen dasar dalam melakukan penilaian risiko. Jadi untuk memahami ada 3 step atau 3 langkah dalam penilaian risiko ketiga. Jadi biar gampangnya kita ingat dari kata-kata HIRAC atau kita menyebutnya dengan HIRA-RC. Hazard identification itu berarti identifikasi bahaya, kemudian risk assessment itu penilaian risiko, dan risk control yaitu pengendalian risiko. Jadi ada 3 ya, identifikasi bahaya, penilaian risiko, dan pengendalian risiko.
Ya. Okay, this is the technique. Okay, okay. Before I forget, remember when we're talking about OSH management system, okay, even the hierarchy or risk assessment technique, you should also need to know the OSH management system. Okay, there is a 4 component of risk or OSH management system. First is the planning. Okay. Second part is the D. And the third part is C, check. And the last step is A, action, PDCA. Another school of thought they call POPIA. Okay, whatever school of thought, but for me, I using PDCA. Plan that whatever that you have been planned. Do is talking about the identify the hazards. Okay, and check, we do the risk assessment, and action is risk management. So the step of risk assessment technique should be first, you need to classify the work activity, a work task. Okay, whether the works is something like this. For example, making a bread sandwich. Also, before make a sandwich, you need to do you need to blend it from the raw materials. Mix with the flours, sugars, bake, and so on, and until you have the end product. So each process, you need to classify it, because each process or work task, they also have different kind of the hazards. And this kind of work activity that have a different kind of the hazard, it also potentially can cause harm or injury within the process. Then you need to identify the hazards. You need to identify the hazards. And the second one, you need to determine the hazards. Okay, so in the hazard identification, this is HI. Okay, so determine the risk and decide the risk whether it's tolerable or not tolerable. This is what we call risk assessment. This is the part of risk assessment. Risk hazard is the HI. Determine the risk and decide whether the risk is tolerable or intolerable. This is what we call risk assessment. And the last one, risk control, what you call risk management. Okay, Bapak, ya Pak?
Ya, jadi dalam teknik penilaian risiko, ya, jadi kita harus mengklasifikasikan aktivitas-aktivitas yang ada di perusahaan. Ya, apa saja pekerjaan-pekerjaan yang ada, ya, pelayanan-pelayanan yang ada, aktivitasnya apa saja. Ya, kalau misalnya kita misalnya kita di rumah begitu ya, ada pekerjaan di dapur, kemudian ada di kamar mandi gitu ya. Nah, itu kita harus pisahkan ya. Di perusahaan juga seperti itu, mungkin ada produksi, ada area maintenance, ada area office. Jadi kita mengklasifikasikan aktivitas-aktivitas yang ada di perusahaan. Kemudian berikutnya adalah kita melakukan identifikasi bahaya yang ada di perusahaan. Karena berbeda aktivitasnya, berbeda juga bahayanya. Kemudian menentukan resikonya ya. Resiko tersebut ada yang tolerable, artinya dapat ditolerir, tapi ada juga yang resiko itu untolerable gitu ya, yang tidak dapat kita tolerir. Kemudian setelah kita memutuskan, kemudian maka perlu ada pengendalian terkait dengan resiko-resiko yang ada tersebut.
Yeah. So there is a various technique that you can use the what I call hazard analysis. Okay, I already mentioned on the hierarchies. There is some technique can be used, for example, from the job safety analysis, fault tree analysis, failure mood and effect analysis, hazard analysis, fishbone, whatever the technique. It depends on the thing or the methods or the operations. Because each technique, even though the ultimate is to manage the hazards, to control the hazards, but it depends on the procedure or kind of hazards. Either this hazardous, not hazardous during operations type of work. So basically, in Malaysia, we are using the hierarchy. We can use if there is when the work activities is more than 10 activity or 12 activities and above. If the work task is less than, for example, in the lab, okay, in the laboratoriums, laboratory, for example, in the biological laboratory, maybe the work task is less than 10 procedure. Then you can use either job safety analysis or job health analysis. For example, in the hazard and operability study, mostly this tool are used in the petroleum industry. For example, in engineering, they are using the fault tree analysis. They are using, for example, life cycle analysis. They are using Toyota culture and so on. So it depends on the technique that you can use and the proper use while you're using the risk assessment and risk management. Ya, Bapak?
Ya, jadi ada beberapa teknik yang dapat digunakan ya kalau kita menyebutnya sebagai perangkat manajemen risiko ya. Ada berbagai macam perangkat untuk manajemen risiko, ada namanya HREC tadi, identifikasi bahaya dan penilaian risiko. Kemudian ada job safety analysis, itu adalah analisa keselamatan kerja. Kemudian ada fault tree analysis, itu adalah analisa pohon kegagalan. Kemudian ada failure mode and effect analysis, ini adalah analisa mode kegagalan dan efeknya. Kemudian ada HAZOPS ya. Nah, ini tergantung dari metodenya ya. Nah, kalau misalnya di suatu pekerjaan itu luas ya begitu, ada lebih dari 10 prosedur, itu kita bisa menggunakan HREC begitu. Tapi kalau kurang dari misalnya 5, kita bisa menggunakan teknik JSA atau FTA. Nah, kalau misalnya industri proses seperti misalnya industri migas atau misalnya industri kimia, nah yang lazim digunakan adalah di keselamatan proses adalah HAZOP.
Yeah. So this is I just keep for the fault tree analysis. For example, the FTA, they are focused on to analyze how and why. We're talking about how, the question of how and why the accident or incident happened. And the second one, you need to do a sketching, the graphic technique. That's why we call fault tree analysis. Okay. And the third one, you quantify it. You calculate the risk, what you call risk rating, to calculate probability of the end of the event. Ya, Pak?
Ya, fokusnya ini untuk FTA ya, untuk analisa pohon kegagalan ya. Kalau untuk FTA atau kita menyebutnya sebagai analisa pohon kegagalan, ini menganalisa mengapa dan kenapa kecelakaan itu bisa terjadi. Kemudian dia fokus juga pada ada penggambaran analisa pohon tadi ya, pohonnya ke bawah. Kemudian untuk mengkalkulasi atau menilai kemungkinan atau probability dari suatu kejadian.
Yeah. Okay, this is for example, if the operator, the workers will fall from the defective ladder, you need to ask why it happened, why the defective ladder is not found during the normal inspection. Why did the supervisor allow this operator to use? Was the employee proper trained, and so on. This is talking about the persoalan because on why and how the incident happens. Okay, then you need to select the analysis, and you need, for example, here. Okay, this is the fault tree analysis. You have to create a diagrams of the incident happen. The procedure, and you able for this is what they call the incidents. Okay, this is the workers who are fall from the defective ladder, and this is what they call the question, how and why it happens. And the last one, this is the proper way recommendation, risk recommendation or risk control or risk management in order to manage in the future. The person will not happen accidents while they are stepping the ladder. Ya, Pak.
Ya, jadi teknik fault tree analysis atau FTA atau kita menyebutnya sebagai analisa pohon kegagalan ini adalah salah satu metode yang digunakan untuk penilaian risiko ya. Nah, jadi ini dimulai dari suatu event, dari suatu kejadian, kemudian ditarik ke belakang. Kira-kira apa penyebabnya? Jadi dengan menanyakan why sampai ke bawah sampai ditemukan root causes atau akar masalahnya begitu.
Yeah. Okay, this is JSA. Okay, it's very simple. Like I said, either less than 5 or 10 procedure. JSA can be used in very small scale risk assessment and risk management. For example, in the lab, small work unit, and so on. This is what we call the qualitative methods. Basically, the job safety analysis, job health analysis, the method we call qualitative. It can also be quantitative or semi-quantitative. You put the numbers, you put the likelihood and the severity, then you can calculate the risk rating. So this is GSA is among the method, the tool that simplify, especially when you have a very simple or less than 10 work activity, then you can use the GSA or GHA. Okay. Ya, Pak?
Ya, tadi kalau yang pertama tadi salah satu metode atau perangkatnya adalah tadi fault tree analysis, yang kedua ini namanya JSI atau job safety analysis atau analisa keselamatan kerja. Nah, kalau JSI ini biasanya digunakan untuk pekerjaan-pekerjaan yang simple dan tidak banyak prosedur, biasanya untuk pekerjaan-pekerjaan yang prosedurnya kurang dari 10. Nah, ini kita gunakan job safety analysis. Nah, di dalam melakukan job safety analysis ini kita mengidentifikasi bahayanya, kemudian menentukan kira-kira pengendalian apa yang bisa kita lakukan untuk menghilangkan atau mencegah adanya paparan atau exposure.
Yeah. Okay, now we go the most important part, the hierarchy. Okay, so what are the purpose of hierarchy? Okay, first, of course, to identify all factors that might be. All factors, it means all potential hazards in the workplace that might be cause harm or injury, what we call a risk. Okay, hazard is any kind of agent, hazardous substances, chemicals, ergonomic problem, either in the physical form, chemical form, biological form, psychosocial form, ergonomic form, environmental form, that might be cause any harm or injury to the workers. Either can cause injury, physical injury, either called mechanical injury, or might be have occupational exposure, occupational disease, or industrial accidents, or maybe fatality, or maybe the damage to the property in the workplaces. Okay, so you're able to identify the hazards that potentially can cause harm or injury to the employee or other person who are entering in the workplaces. For example, visitors, contractor, and so on. The second one, the purpose of hierarchy is to consider what are the chances that harm actually falling any certain in particular cases, possible severe, that come from it. So we have we able to quantify or imagine whether this risk is very dangerous, can cause occupational exposure, occupational disease, industrial, or might be low, what we consider low exposure, medium exposure, or high exposure. And the third one, you able to particularly the majikan employer to plan. If you have proper hierarchy, so majikan employer, able to plan, manage, or monitor preventive measure. What we call in occupational safety and health, there is two measures. First, what we call the proactive measures, or engineering we call maintenance. We call leading indicators. And another one we call reactive indicators, or we call the lagging indicators. Okay, so Bapak.
Ya, jadi apa tujuan dari, jadi metode tadi yang pertama adalah FDA, kemudian yang kedua JSA, dan yang ketiga metode yang digunakan atau perangkat manajemen risiko ketiga adalah hierarchy, ya, atau bahasa kitanya itu IBPR, ya, identifikasi bahaya dan penilaian risiko. Jadi apa sih tujuan dari pelaksanaan HREC atau IBPR itu? Yang pertama adalah untuk mengidentifikasi semua bahaya yang dapat membahayakan pekerja. Nah, bahaya itu ada berbagai macam ya, ada bahaya fisik, ada bahaya kimia, bahaya biologi, bahaya psikososial, dan lain-lain. Kemudian yang kedua, mempertimbangkan resikonya, kemungkinannya ya. Kemudian yang ketiga adalah untuk memungkinkan employers itu adalah perusahaan ya untuk merencanakan, kemudian juga memantau tindakan-tindakan pengendalian untuk mengendalikan resiko yang ada.
Okay, this is the process of HIREC. If you can see, it also similar than we talking the HIREC. Okay, you need to remember this step. Okay, first we classify the work activity. I think already you already understand it. The second part is consultation. It might be you can use internally. We talking about the from the input the team who will be doing the risk assessment, either from internally SHO in the company, safety and health committee in the company, or you outsource from somebody consultation into your system. And the second step is identify the hazards. Okay, HI. So RA is the risk assessment. You need to do risk assessment, proper use risk assessment. Either you want to do HIREC, GSA. Because GSA different kind of the method. Okay. You want to do FTA, different kind of method, but similarly the same the objective. Then you need to prepare the risk control. This is suggestions, recommendation, manage to control whether the current control measure can be adding, or there is some ineffective that you should top up in the hierarchy of control. Then you need to apply action, implement, and you need to review the process. So this is what they call the summarize of the how can you do a HIREC. Okay, Bapak?
Ya, bagaimana proses dari pelaksanaan HIREC atau identifikasi bahaya dan penilaian risiko itu? Yang pertama adalah mengklasifikasikan aktivitas-aktivitas pekerjaan yang ada di perusahaan. Kemudian yang kedua adalah melakukan konsultasi. Konsultasi bisa dilakukan secara internal ya dengan orang safety dan lain sebagainya. Kemudian bisa juga dilaksanakan dengan berkonsultasi dengan konsultan dari luar. Kemudian langkah selanjutnya adalah mengidentifikasi bahaya dengan berbagai macam metode. Kemudian setelah mengidentifikasi bahaya, maka dilakukan penilaian risiko. Setelah diketahui nilai resikonya, kemudian maka dilakukan tindakan atau pengendalian resiko yang ada. Nah, pengendalian tersebut kemudian diimplementasikan. Setelah diimplementasikan, maka pengendalian yang sudah ada juga wajib untuk direview atau ditinjau ulang.
Yeah. Okay. The first step of the HIREC is hazard identification. Okay. You can remember what we call 5M. Okay. First, who are work or potential can cause harm to them is the man, human. Of course lah. While in the manufacturing, workers need to be execute or done the works. So man, okay. Then the second one is machinery. While the employee do a work, it also need to use the machinery, tool, equipment, machinery, jentera dan sebagainya. That might be the machine can cause harm to the employee. And another one, the material. For example, if they are using the chemicals while mixing the substances, for example, or you need to identify what are kind of chemicals, material. Either this is potential can cause harm or injury to the man, or the machine, and first procedure, methods, and also environment. Environment we call mediums. So remember, we have 5 M's: man, machine, material, methods, and media. This kind of 5M can potentially cause what we call hazards that might be effect to the, can be exposed to the employee. Okay, Bapak?
Ya, Jadi dalam mengidentifikasi bahaya itu metodenya seperti apa ya? Jadi ingat rumus disampaikan oleh Pak Azwan tadi ya. Ada MM-nya. Apa M itu? Yang pertama itu adalah man. Man itu adalah manusianya, pekerjanya. Yang bisa kita lihat adalah unsafe act-nya atau perilaku-perilaku yang tidak aman. Kemudian yang kedua adalah mesin, ya mesin bagaimana layout-nya, bagaimana desain dari suatu peralatan tersebut. Kemudian yang ketiga adalah material yang digunakan, misalnya bahan kimia, apakah bahan kimianya mudah meledak, mudah terbakar, kemudian larutan-larutan yang digunakan. Kemudian yang keempat adalah bagaimana pekerjaan itu dilakukan atau metode pekerjaan itu dilakukan, prosedurnya bagaimana. Dan yang terakhir adalah lingkungan, misalnya pencahayaan, kemudian kebisingan, getaran, housekeeping, kemudian stasiun kerja, dan lain-lain.
Yeah. Okay, this is what they call the 5 hazards. Some school of thought they put 5. Some school of thought just put 6. Either I can accept it. Either hazard might be a physical, for example, like lighting, dust, radiation, non-radiation, radiations, proper wirings. It might be biological from the viruses, from the bacteria, from the fungal, from the bite, from the venomous snake, for example. It might be chemicals. It might be ergonomics. For example, manual handling, repetitive work, outwork posture, and so on. Or psychosocial, techno-stress, burnout syndrome, occupational stress, and so on. Another one, school of thought, they said environmental hazards. Okay, Bapak?
Ya, jadi identifikasi bahaya itu apa saja ya? Secara umum, bahaya itu dapat diklasifikasikan menjadi 5. Yang pertama adalah bahaya fisik, misalnya terkait dengan mesin yang tidak ada perlindungannya, ya, kemudian permukaan yang tajam, bekerja di ketinggian, ya, kemudian yang kedua adalah bahaya biologi, ya, misalnya yang sekarang kita hadapi, misalnya ya SARS-CoV-2 gitu ya, kemudian bakteri, nyamuk, kemudian tikus dan lain-lain. Kemudian ada yang ketiga adalah bahaya kimia, ya, kimia itu ada yang disebut dengan bahayanya ada yang korosif, bahaya menyebabkan iritasi, toksik material atau material-material yang beracun. Kemudian yang keempat adalah bahaya ergonomi. Bahaya ergonomi itu adalah bahaya yang berhubungan dengan repetitive work atau pekerjaan yang dilakukan secara berulang. Kemudian yang kedua adalah awkward posture, itu adalah postur yang tidak nyaman, begitu ya. Kemudian yang terakhir adalah bahaya psikososial. Ini bahaya yang berhubungan dengan psikologi, ya, misalnya stres kerja, kemudian mengalami fatigue atau kelelahan, dan lain-lain.
Yeah. Okay, this is what we call hazards identification technique. Okay, yes, you must do, before you do a risk assessment, you need to form a team. The team is a competent person, trained person who are willing to do a risk assessment. Either internals committee, safety and health committee, or from the outsource. Maybe risk identification or risk assessment, you need, for example, when there is accident happen, fatality. So must be from the police, from the Department of OSH. The outside people will also include in your team. Either 3 lah, consultations, internals, inspection, or external inspections. Okay, you need to do the inspections. Then after that, you classify the work activity, work units. Before you need to know all informations. Work unit, interview, proof, evidence, walkabout, and you identify the potential accident factors. You have to discuss among the expertise, the team of you. It's not just you, SSO. You need also maybe from the chemical engineer. For example, it happened in the chemical operations line, for example, which you doesn't have any knowledge, but they have the knowledge, you put under your team. And there is some interview sessions, recording, or what we call observation, to get a data, primary data or secondary data, in order you to understand what happens. And you try to search for root cause analysis. Either you're doing FTA, you assess the material, you take a samples, you do real-time measurements, air sampling, noise monitoring. You get some, you send the sample to the lab to get the result, and so on. So this is the technique of the hazard identifications. Ya, Pak?
Ya. Jadi untuk mengidentifikasi bahaya itu apa saja teknik yang bisa digunakan gitu ya. Jadi teknik yang pertama itu adalah inspeksi ya. Jadi dapat dilakukan dengan melakukan inspeksi ke area-area perusahaan. Kemudian yang kedua adalah melakukan investigasi pendahuluan terkait kalau misalnya ada faktor-faktor yang berpotensi dapat menyebabkan terjadinya kecelakaan. Kemudian yang ketiga adalah analisis kegagalan. Nah, kita juga bisa mengidentifikasi suatu bahaya itu berasal dari suatu kecelakaan. Kecelakaan tersebut kan pasti akan diidentifikasi untuk menemukan root causes atau akar masalah tersebut.
Yeah. So there is 3 types of risk assessment: qualitative risk assessment, semi-quantitative, and the third one, quantitative. The qualitative is something without the numbers. For example, you go there to do risk assessment, you feel with your senses, then you classify, oh, this is very dangerous, this is very toxic, or it might be fall, for example. But qualitative is very difficult to estimate the risk. For example, you want to put evaluation to somebody based on physically. Okay, you know Alicia, for example, who apa ni? Normilina. Okay, Normilina. How you, for example, your friend judge you whether you are chubby, overweight, so tiny, ideal weight, so very chun, whatever it is. So this is qualitative. But when you want to put into mathematicals, because when you're talking in occupational safety health, we need a numbers. We need money and cents. We need a CGPA, for example. Okay, whether this is pandai tak pandai, but you need to be quantify it. So qualitative, basically, from the judgmental, from the professional expert, it's very seldom lah. But in the hierarchy, we are doing the semi-quantitative risk assessment. It means we put the element of quantitative, for example, likelihood and severity. This is qualitative. How you define this likelihood and how you define severity, you quantify it. For example, severity, you said first aid, minor injury, major injury, fatality. So you put a numbers, 1 for first aid, contohnya. 2nd for the minor, 4th for fatality. So this is what called semi-quantitative risk assessment methods. So this will be happen in the hierarchy. If in the job safety analysis or job health analysis, basically they are using qualitative methods, but they can also be converted to semi-quantitative if you put numbers. Okay, and another one is quantitative method. So this is very difficult, very rare, but I give you some example. Even though this is not related with OSH, basically in the public health. For example, you want to study the BMI, body mass index. WHO already defined with various judgmental professional finding that everybody know for ASEAN people, the ideal BMI, body mass index, is 23 kgms. For Western, 25. So why? This is quantitative, already been proved by the professional and by convenient, constructive, scientific finding. But basically in occupational safety and health, we are using the semi-quantitative risk management. Ya, Pak?
Ya, jadi jenis-jenis metode dari penilaian risiko itu ada 3 ya. Ada penilaian risiko secara kualitatif, ada penilaian risiko semi kuantitatif, dan penilaian risiko secara kuantitatif begitu. Kalau kualitatif ini tidak ada angka-angkanya ya, tapi berupa gambaran begitu. Sedangkan semi kuantitatif diberi angka begitu. Nah, kalau kuantitatif ini tidak terlalu banyak digunakannya. Jadi ini di-highlight oleh Pak Azwan bahwa dari 3 metode ini yang paling banyak digunakan adalah metode penilaian risiko secara semi kuantitatif. Misalnya tadi diberikan contoh penilaian severity atau keparahan dari suatu impact, misalnya ya. Kalau misalnya impact-nya first aid, dibutuhkan misalnya pertolongan pertama, itu dinilai sebagai 1 gitu. Kemudian kalau misalnya terjadi fatality atau kematian pada pekerja itu dinilai sebagai 3 gitu. Itu contoh.
Ya, ada soalan nanti saya akan jawab selepas Q&A ya nanti dulu. From Rina Tri Faizani ya nanti.
Ya.
Oke.
Ini di sesi Q&A Bapak.
Ya. Oke, kemudian kita pergi ke risk assessment, RA, RA. So basically risk, what is risk? Is the probability can cause any harm or injury to the employee who are exposed any kind of hazards, physical, chemical, biological, psychosocial, ergonomic, environmental hazard that might be can trigger him or her injury, occupational disease, industrial accident, or damage to the property. So this is the risk, and risk can be mathematically can be calculated. Risk is equal likelihood kebarangkalian multiply and with the severity, keterukan. So the formula, remember, risk can be calculated, can be quantitative. The formula is likelihood multiply with the severity, what we call risk rating. Ya Pak?
Iya. Jadi bagaimana formula atau penilaian resiko? Resiko itu untuk rumusnya adalah L dikali S ya. Resiko itu adalah perkalian antara likelihood. Likelihood itu kalau di bahasa Indonesianya adalah kemungkinan.
Iya.
Kemungkinan dikali severity. Severity itu dalam bahasa kita itu keparahan.
Ya, betul.
Jadi resiko itu rumusnya adalah kemungkinan dari suatu kemungkinannya dikalikan dengan dampak atau keparahannya.
Ya, impact. Okay, good. So kalau nak ingat macam inilah. Okay, there is some balancing. Okay, so likelihood contohnya keberangkat. Likelihood somebody can fall from the higher to the ground. Okay, is it likelihood can be frequent. Every time he climb, it fall. Ataupun dia climb, maybe about 1,000 cycle, he can fall. So it depends. And also severity. When somebody fall from, for example, from 3 meters, 3 meters and above in Malaysia, in the BOAC regulation under Factory and Machinery Act, we consider they must wear a proper attire. PPE, for example, body harness, for example. For example, the highest person, where he climb or her climb, when he or she fall, the severity will be higher, fatality. Okay? So there is some balancing. So this is need to be calculated to meet to rating, whether the likelihood is higher or severity will be lower, or maybe everybody likelihood will be higher and severity will be higher. So from that, can be calculate, you be quantify the risk, and you have the proper recommendation how to manage the problem, either during the accident, before the operations, or current the operations. Ya, Bapak?
Ya, jadi tadi sudah sampaikan bahwa penilaian risiko itu rumusnya probabilitas ya, bagaimana kemungkinan peristiwa itu bisa terjadi ya, dikalikan dengan severity atau keparahannya, itu akan berbeda ya. Misalnya ketinggian ya, orang yang bekerja ketinggian 1 meter dengan orang bekerja di ketinggian 3 meter atau bekerja lebih dari itu ya, makin tinggi ketinggian seseorang bekerja, tentu severity ketika dia jatuh itu akan lebih besar daripada orang bekerja dengan ketinggian 1 meter.
Ya. Okay. So what is likelihood what we call probability, kebarangkalian, kemungkinan, is how likely it is that the hazardous event or situation will occur. It depends. Likelihood will be depend on certain factors. For example, the numbers, quantity of the workers who are involved. For example, if they during the working height, for example, in the crane tower, only one operator. If there is some problem, for example, a collapse of the tower crane, only one person will be having a problem, or maybe fatality or what. But if the number of operator only one, but below there is several workers or public in the ground, when they fall, it might be effect to all person, including the operator and the public or the workers who are in that lingkungan. We all can get injury or fatality. It depends on the numbers. And the second one, frequent of exposure, whether it is hourly exposed. For example, as the student to do a project sarjana model, final year student do a project, you are using the kind of chemical. How frequent that you inhale the chemical, whether minutes, hours, cumulative hours, per daily, per weekly, or per monthly. And failure to use a proper PPE, personal protective equipment. That, for example, in that procedure, safe operating procedure, you need to wear a mask. But you only using the paper mask. But in that procedure, from the safety data sheet or chemical safety data sheet, it requires that you have to use a proper respirator. For example, cartridge, it depends on the chemical. So it might have different kind of exposure. Because the more you're using the PPE for the respirator is more effective rather than you are using only the paper mask. While you handle the chemical, for example, certain type of chemical. It depends on the machinery failures. Whether you are using the body system, pairing system, maintenance, who want to refit, corrective maintenance. There is some problem with the machine, and the technician want to do repairing. Whether they have a system, what they call LOTO, take in, log out, take out, LOTO. Nobody measure. There's somebody who are switched on, and the poor guy get the accidents. Okay, or existing control measure. What the current control measure? For example, now, okay, I'm the programmer, computer programmer. Okay, it might be my chair is not suitable for me because I have to stay prolonged sitting, maybe more than 10 or 12 hours. So it might be I have supposed to have ergonomics or well-designed chair while doing the operations. So likelihood not simply does that you put a numbers. Likelihood, okay, for only 1 or 2 or 3. You have to consider this kind of factors before you put the numbers. Okay, Pak?
Ya, jadi apa pertimbangan-pertimbangan yang kita harus pertimbangkan ya di dalam penilaian kemungkinan itu. Yang pertama adalah jumlah pekerja yang terlibat. Tadi dicontohkan oleh Bapak Dr. Azwan, misalnya kalau ada orang bekerja dengan kren ya, di atasnya ada 1 orang yang bekerja ya. Kemudian bagaimana kalau misalnya di bawahnya ada pekerja ya. Jadi makin banyak orang yang bekerja, tentu probabilitasnya atau kemungkinannya itu akan lebih besar. Ya, jadi makin banyak pekerja yang terlibat, tentu probabilitasnya juga meningkat. Kemudian yang kedua adalah frekuensi dan periode suatu pajanan. Misalnya ketika misalnya ada pekerja atau misalnya kalian bekerja di laboratorium, ya, misalnya ada suatu bahaya kimia yang itu kemudian menguap, misalnya atau ada gas, ya. Berapa lama kalian terpapar itu akan menentukan likelihood, ya, kemungkinan pajanannya. Misalnya ya kalian bekerja dalam hitungan menit dengan bekerja dalam hitungan jam, atau kalian bekerja misalnya full 8 jam bekerja dengan suatu kimia, ya berbeda waktu periode pajanannya akan berbeda likelihood-nya atau probabilitas kalian terpapar. Gitu ya.
Ya.
Kemudian
Oke, ya Pak.
Ya, kemudian penentuan likelihood itu juga dari pengendalian risiko yang sudah ada. Apa yang sudah ada itu menentukan probabilitasnya. Kalau pengendaliannya sudah bagus, tentu probabilitasnya jadi berkurang. Tapi kalau pengendalian yang ada itu masih tidak cukup atau tidak adekuat, nah tentu juga likelihood-nya akan meningkat.
Ya. Okay. This is what I call the easiest understanding when I said semi-quantitative method. We are looking at the first element on the risk likelihood. Okay, this is what I call the likelihood in terms of qualitative. Okay, for example, very unlikely, unlikely, sometime, very unlikely, most likely. Okay, so this is qualitative. Okay, but in terms of to define, okay, to make a quantitative, you must put the numbers. Okay, so first you need the operational definitions. I think for those who are using doing a thesis or dissertation in terms of methodology, you have what they call conceptual definitions. Another one, you have operation definitions. Okay, you need to have some definition on that. Very unlikely, what it mean, what a definition of very unlikely. For example, very unlikely is practically imposed and has never occurred. Okay, most likely and so on. So here, from the below lower to the higher, the higher the likelihood, the higher numbers of risk rating or likelihood. You put number, for example, most likely you put 5. And very likely you put number 1. Ataupun for example, likelihood dia untuk fall, jatuh di tempat tinggi. Sama ada very unlikely or likely, for example. So the most likely you put the highest numbers. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is what I call semi-quantitative method. Combination of quantitative and qualitative put together, then you can get a numbers, you can define the likelihood is this. So this is one of the complete definition. How can you do the risk assessment, particularly in the likelihood? Oke, Pak?
Ya, ini contoh tabel atau kriteria untuk penilaian likelihood atau kemungkinan begitu ya.
Ya.
Probabilitas ya. Ini dimulai dari misalnya sangat tidak mungkin sampai nanti yang paling mungkin. Dikombinasikan semi kuantitatif itu kita mengkombinasikan antara kualitatif dan kuantitatif. Ada angkanya juga. Misalnya jika kemungkinannya itu sangat tidak mungkin gitu ya, atau tidak pernah terjadi, maka kita beri ratingnya itu 1 gitu ya. Nah, naik ke atas ya, misalnya kalau sangat mungkin terjadi ya, jadi jika suatu kejadian itu kemungkinannya itu sangat sering terjadi, nah kita beri nilai rating 5 begitu. Jadi makin ke atas nilainya makin tinggi.
Ya. Okay, severity. One of the component when you want to do a risk rating, risk is equivalent of likelihood multiplied with severity. Now severity, keparahan, keterokan. Okay, so this is the outcome for the event or severity or injury or damage pada property. Remember, even though contohnya ada shielding di atas saya sekarang, diffuser. Okay, diffuser is the falling diffuser is the hazards. If the diffuser fall but not impact to my head, only damage to my computer. I have 3 computer here, but damage to the property is also considered the incidents. So damage pada property, even though they are not injured to the person. Kalau injured the person, apatah lagi. So keterokan dia, it depend. So severity, how serious of that effect. For example, seorang itu terjatuh daripada tempat yang tinggi, di aras yang tinggi, contohnya tingkat 8, dengan cuma 1 kaki sahaja. Of course, yang tingkat 8 kalau jatuh, confirm. Kemungkinan dia 100% can be fatality, mati. Kemungkinan maut. mematikan. Tetapi mungkin jatuh satu kaki itu saja, mungkin tidak ada cedera, mungkin just one saja. Remember, maybe one question, why don't we put 0? Why we put 1? Okay, Bapak mungkin boleh tanyakan soalan kepada pelajar Bapak lah. Kenapa kita tidak letak kosong, 0, nil, tetapi yang paling minimal kita letak 1. Nanti Bapak tanyakan pada mereka lah untuk take home, ya Pak? Okay, teruskan Bapak.
Ya, jadi rumus penilaian risiko itu formulanya adalah kemungkinan dikalikan dengan dampak atau keparahannya, gitu ya. Nah, sebagai contoh tadi misalnya orang yang bekerja ketinggian 8 meter misalnya. Kalau jatuh ya dengan orang yang bekerja dengan 1 kaki. Ya. 1 kaki itu berapa meter ya? Itu ya segitu ya. Nah,
12 inci, Pak.
12 inci ya. Nah, tentu dampaknya itu akan berbeda. Kita bisa menilai ya, kalau misalnya orang bekerja di ketinggian 1 kaki, ya itu mungkin dampaknya kalau kita bisa berikan itu mungkin 1, begitu ya. Tetapi kalau misalnya orang bekerja di ketinggian 8 meter ketika jatuh ke bawah, ya kita bisa memperkirakan keparahan yang akan terjadi, itu bisa mungkin fatality, begitu ya Pak.
Ya. Tapi harus diingat, kemungkinan 1 kaki itu maybe can cause serious injury. For example, it might be just 1 kaki bekerja di atas aras itu, terjatuh, terhantuk, kena ke bucu meja, parah atau cedera. So it might be different because remember there is a few factors that I already mentioned when you want to do risk assessment. Okay, this is semi-quantitative that I mentioned. Define what is the severity. Okay, remember, I hope everybody can read the attachment that I will give to you, that Pak Otomi give to you on the guideline of the hierarchy. Severity, likelihood, there is several definitions. One of the definition for severity, for example, negligence, minor, serious. This is the lowest. You put number 1. The highest, catastrophic. For example, disaster, effect, machinery, for example, big fires, big explosion, not damage to the machinery, the workers who are effect. It might be also can be others building or others to the environment. This is catastrophic. Okay, so you put from the lowest number 1, you put quantitative. This is qualitative definitions. You need to define, because when you want to define the severity and likelihood, you need to define. This is a normally lah. Even though in public health, you have operation definition and conceptual definition. It depends on what method that you use, what study that you want to use. Okay, 1 to 5. Okay, so basically you have the clear understanding. That's why the semi-quantitative is give a clear definition, clear picture when you want to do a risk assessment, and somebody who are looking at your assessment, your management, the risk management, they can easily understood what that you are talking about and what the implication when you do a calculation and manage the risk in the workplaces based on the hierarchy. Okay, Pak?
Ya, ini untuk kriteria untuk severity atau keparahan ya. Ini mulai dari yang paling bawah, negligible, itu artinya dapat diabaikan ya, minor, kemudian serius, fatal, dan katastrofik. Nah, kalau misalnya yang dapat diabaikan itu misalnya biasanya pertolongan pertama pada kecelakaan, begitu ya. Kalau minor itu menyebabkan luka tapi tidak menyebabkan kerusakan permanen, gitu. Kalau serius misalnya kejadian-kejadian non fatal tetapi menyebabkan terjadi kerusakan permanen. Nah, kalau fatal itu untuk single fatality, ya, menyebabkan adanya kematian gitu. Sedangkan katastrofik itu yang bencana, ya, yang menyebabkan banyak orang meninggal, kerusakan properti yang begitu luas, kerusakan kerugian produksi yang begitu besar.
Okay. Maybe a question will be raised by you. Perlu tak kita letak sampai 1 sampai 5? Boleh tak 1 sampai 10 ataupun 1 sampai 3, 1 sampai 4? It depend on your discussion or with your expertise. For example, like me, we follow the guideline from the DOSH in the hierarchy. So that's why when you have only 5 by 5 tables, 5 by 5, it means you have 5 likelihood scale, you have 5, 1 to 5 scale of the severity. So we call 5 by 5 metric of the risk assessment. It can be, biasanya job safety analysis, job health analysis, we use 3 by 3 table. So it means they have 3 likelihood and 3 severity. It can be 10. The more complex, the more complex that you will try to solve. But basically, we use 5 by 5 tables. Okay. So this is the okay. The thing is how you estimate. When you get numbers, probability or likelihood and severity, you need to estimate. For example, maybe likelihood you dapat 4, severity you have 5. So 4 multiplied by 5 is 20. So 20, is it high, moderate, or very low? So we have what you call the quantitative. How to estimate? We call the traffic light colors, green, yellow colors, and the red colors. Indicate of low exposure for the green, medium for the moderate risk, and the highest is the high risk that you need cannot be intolerable. So it means this is what they call risk is significant. You accept the risk, but yellow and red, this is not significant. Intolerable risk that you need to control whether this is as soon as possible or you have the schedule to to manage the risk. Ya, Pak?
Ya, jadi ini hasil dari penilaian risiko itu ada 3 ya, ada rendah, ada sedang, ada tinggi begitu ya. Nah, ini bisa kita lihat ada gambar hijau, kuning, merah begitu ya. Kalau yang risiko hijau itu berarti dia secara umum dapat diterima ya, atau generally acceptable. Kalau medium itu yang tolerable, yang dapat ditolerir dengan tindakan penilaian lebih lanjut. Kalau yang tinggi itu yang intolerable. Ini yang tidak dapat sama sekali kita tolerir risikonya.
Yeah. Okay. After that, maybe you cannot imagine how can we do a risk by calculating multiply likelihood and severity. So we put in the tables. Okay. So this is called 5 by 5 tables, or what you call risk assessment metric. Usually you can put either or, but particularly, okay, in the y axis, this is likelihood. Okay, so likelihood you already define, and you have severity. So basically, when you want to estimate the risk, we have the colors. So basically 1 to 4, we consider lower exposure. It means you can accept the risk. It means basically you just control it. Okay, leave it. No need to do any kind of thing. It means control measure, existing control measure already put in place. No worry about that. There is less incident will be happen, or no incident will happen, because the current control measures already put in place. But from the 5 to 12, we consider medium or moderate exposure. So kuning, you need to aware. It might be potentially cause harm or injury. Okay. And the last one, the red zone, 15 to 25. Okay. This is the thing you cannot intolerate. You need to do something as soon as possible. Depend on your budget, depend on the other factors, human, cost, and so on. Okay. So it depends. Remember that when talking about risk rating, is multiplication of the likelihood and the severity. For example, if you put likelihood 4, you go to number 4, and maybe severity you number 3. So you go 4, and this is 3. So multiply 4 times 3 is 12. So you estimate 12 under the red zone, yellow zones. So this is, you need to aware. You need to do something. So it might be there is certain inappropriate PPE, for example, improper, or there is something lack in your current control measure that you need to enhance in order to reduce any kind of potential injury or harm to the workers or to the environment or to the work environments. So you need to do something. Okay. But if in the red zone, there is no tolerable, it might be you need to stop the operations. Because when you do, later on, maybe the high probability major injury or highly damage to your property, your machinery, your equipment can be happen. So you cannot be, it might be stop the work, or you need to or for example, like for example, for employee, you need to remove from the work unit. For example, this person have the problem, we have condition, who are exposed with high dangerous oxygen, super toxic, for example, chemical, contohnya cyanide or isocyanates, can cause occupational asthma, and he also have the history of childhood asthma or work-related asthma. So you need to remove him from that zone to another what you call light work lah. So in order he not getting worse and worse, worsen getting a occupational disease. Okay, Bapak, ya?
Ya, jadi ini untuk matriks penilaian resiko ya. Jadi ini perkalian matriks 5x5 ya. Kita bisa melihat di sini di matriks ini ada tiga zona ya. Ada zona hijau, ada zona kuning, ada zona merah. Nah, zona hijau ini ya artinya bahwa resiko itu secara umum dapat diterima begitu. Sedangkan zona kuning ini adalah zona resiko sedang. Nah, di sini ini harus berhati-hati karena ada potensi untuk terjadinya suatu accident atau insiden sehingga butuh pengendalian lebih lanjut ya. Kemudian merah. Nah, merah ini adalah intolerable risk ya, resiko-resiko yang tidak dapat diterima begitu. Nah, dari sini kita misalnya melihat ya, tadi contoh oleh Pak Azwan, misalnya likelihood-nya itu 4, seri severity-nya itu 3, nilainya 12. Nah, 12 itu masuk ke zona kuning. Nah, oleh sebab itu butuh tindakan-tindakan pengendalian yang perlu dilakukan, apa pendilian teknik atau penggunaan APD dan lain-lain. Tapi kalau sudah zona merah atau nilai resikonya itu sudah masuk kategori high atau tinggi, maka pekerjaan itu perlu di-stop. Ya, tadi diberikan contoh oleh Pak Azwan, misalnya ada seseorang yang bekerja dengan toxic material, misalnya asam sianida, misalnya. Sianida itu kan sangat toksik. Nah, maka orang tersebut ya harus dipindahkan atau tidak boleh bekerja di situ. Jadi memang harus pekerjaan itu dihentikan atau orangnya tidak boleh bekerja di situ karena itu sangat berbahaya sekali.
Ya. Okay, for example, like now, maybe you are experienced in Ahmad Dahlan University. Now we have pandemic COVID, okay? One of the thing that's your pengurusan, your management of the faculty or maybe from the university, before entering into the faculty, okay, there is some procedure that you need to declare that you are not having a symptom of maybe flu, cold, fever, that it might be positive or maybe of the COVID. You have some declaration. For those who are positive or having a symptom of this kind of COVID, are not allowed to entering to the university. So you are considered that the likelihood it might be 4, 3, 4, or 5. If you enter, you can likelihood to disperse or infected to the other people. And the severity, it might be 3, 4, or 5. If somebody close with you, contact with you, communicate with you, you touch or whatever the thing, it might be that person or that certain group who are exposed by the person or infected or the COVID can get also the COVID. So this is kind of the thing you can identify, you can assess, and you can estimate the risk, and you can control that. So this is the thing, the example, the thing when you try to understanding of how can you do the risk assessment metric. Okay.
Sorry Pak Azwan.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Ya, Pak. Okay. Okay. This is definitions on the what they call the
ada
yeah the estimate apa ni of the when you get apa ni low, medium, and high. So this is the definition. The red zone, yes, highly immediate action to control. Either you stop the works, you remove the persons, or you have to do something as soon as possible. Alright. The medium, it require to have a plan systematically controlled. Maybe, for example, local exhaust ventilation system. You doesn't have the system, and the system is very costly. It takes millions ringgits, million ringgits to install, and you need to have the proper maybe within 3 or 5 years. When you get a budget, for example, then you can install. But early stage of control measure, for example, you have training, signage, risk communication. You put in place first, where this is the first practical first, but low budget. Until you get the budget, then you can implement. So this is what I call in the gray, the red zone. But the lowest, the green zone, you can carry out you can monitor, you can maintain the operations. For example, even though you are using high toxics of the material, of the substances, chemical, for example, but you have permit to work, you have authorized person, competent person, you have very effective control measures, and so on. So you might be considered low, for example. So let's carry on, maintain the system. So this is what I call how the action priority that you should done when you calculate the risk assessment. Ya, Pak? Okay. Okay. Carry on, continue. Okay, this is an example of how can you use the hierarchy. Okay. So this is what you call the first one. Step 1 is HI, hazard education. And the works example is the roof repairing. Okay, you can see there is 2 workers who do a repairing in the rooftop, okay, with certain minimal protective equipment and procedure. They are working in the rooftop, working in high, and there is also the hazards of the hot environments, hot surface, okay. I'm not very sure, not proper PPE, and so on. So from that, you need to classify. Step number 1 is hazard identification. You need to first remember work activity, replacing, for example, work activity. What are the work activity? What job that they do? Replacing the damaged sheet roof. What are the hazards that occur in the workplaces? 1, unsupported malsection of the roof tile. Or maybe the second hazard, physical hazard, is sharp edge. Benda objek yang tajam. And what the health effect? What are the consequences of health when you exposed to the hazards? For example, from fall person from the height, or maybe injured from the sharp, from the nail, from the others, or maybe heat stress from the hot environments. Okay, and this is what we call risk rating, risk assessment. So from here, existing control measure, here, there is no control measure put in place. No PPE, no working procedure, any kind of thing, unsafe condition, unsafe act, and so on. So you can estimate, without any kind of existing control put in place, or somebody, your team, your safety and officer put the highest likelihood that, for example, this person is 100%ly or potentially high can fall from the rooftop to the ground. And the severity of injury might be higher, maybe major accident. So 5x5 table here, okay, when we go to 5x5 table, 5 multiplied by 5, maximum 25. So this one, severity estimation is 25. This is in the red zone. It's very dangerous. So you need to do. Ya, Bapak ya teruskan.
Ya, Bapak, mohon maaf.
Ya.
I have a trouble with my signal.
No problem. Oke.
Ya, ya ini sebagai contoh ya penilaian resiko pekerjaan orang yang sedang memperbaiki genteng ini atap ya.
Ya.
Nah, tanpa adanya tanpa adanya pengendalian ya, belum ada pengendalian sama sekali ya, tidak menggunakan APD yang sesuai. Nah, ini pengendalian yang ada itu masih nil atau nol gitu. Sehingga kita bisa lihat di sini bahwa dari likelihood kemungkinannya itu masuk tinggi nih dengan nilai 5. Ketika jatuh tidak ada misalnya pelindung bekerja di ketinggian, ini juga sangat tinggi gitu severity atau keparahan yang mungkin dapat terjadi, bisa menyebabkan fatality, sehingga kita bisa memberi nilai di sini 5. Sehingga 5 kali 5 25, sehingga tingkat risikonya 25. Ini sangat tinggi. Kalau kita lihat kepada matriks risiko yang di-share oleh Pak Azwan, ini tadi masuk kepada kategori zona merah atau risiko tinggi.
Ya. Okay. Now we go to risk control, or what we call risk management. That's why I said I cannot explain to you directly in the risk management if you are not understanding or not well versed in the risk assessment. So this is a part of how can you control, how you manage the problem after you do risk assessment. Because the right risk assessment will come out the outcome, the right, the effective, the proper, the practical risk control or risk management. So this is very important. Poor risk assessment, your outcome is poor risk control, poor risk management. Accident will be happen regularly, repetitively. So your system is not good. So you must be well versed, expert on risk assessment before you do a risk control. Okay. Action to be considered before you do a control risk. First, remember, you need to comply with the regulation that I mentioned you before. You need to comply with the regulations. Regulation for the chemical, for example, use SIMA regulation. Use chemical in our ACTA, in Malaysian ACTA, in OSH. So they said need to do risk assessment, for example, every 2 years. Then we need to do risk assessment for the 2 years, for example, for noise assessment. If you are not comply with the law, the government agency, DOSH, will come inspect your where your high rack. Then tak ada high rack, you get penalty. So get penalty, it might be you have to pay certain amount, or the employer have to go to the court, maybe dipenjarakan ataupun dibayar denda atau kedua sekali. Or the worst, you have to stop the work, stop the operation. This is terribly not good for the employer. The second one, to implement effective OSH management system, because like OSAS 80,001, MS 1722, 1400, 80,000, and so on, they are required risk assessment and risk management part of parcel in their domain in the items of the standards. And to review the risk, because if there is some changes of technology, new person come, employee into your system, repairing and so on, you need to review the certain section to do the risk assessment. Ya, Pak?
Ya, jadi ada beberapa hal yang harus dipertimbangkan ya dalam pengendalian risiko. Jadi yang pertama itu ya harus memenuhi semua aturan undang-undang dan regulasi dan peraturan yang berlaku, begitu ya. Ini harus ya. Karena kalau tidak, tadi sampaikan oleh Pak Azwan ya, bisa pekerjaan itu di stop atau dihentikan, bisa juga mungkin akan dipenjarakan begitu. Ya. Kemudian yang kedua adalah mengimplementasikan SMK 3, Sistem Manajemen Keselamatan dan Kesehatan Kerja. Kemudian yang ketiga, perlu dilakukan peninjauan ulang terkait dengan risiko secara reguler ya, atau secara terencana begitu ya. Ya. Karena apa? Karena perubahan zaman ya, teknologi berubah ya, ada ketidakpastian dan lain-lain, maka risiko itu bisa berubah sehingga perlu ditinjau ulang untuk risiko-risiko yang ada.
Yeah. Okay. This is what they call hierarchy of control. When you talking about the risk control or risk management, the term hierarchy of control, there is some step hierarchy, a class of control measure that you need to do when you get the estimation of risk assessment. Okay, so basically, my school of thought, there is 5 hierarchy of control or control measure that you need to consider before you put recommendations to control or to manage the hazard that occur in the workplaces. First, the highest hierarchy, if that hazard or the hazard that already reached or getting there is some incident happen already put in place in the workplace, or maybe you think about the machine that you buy or the material chemical that you buy are potentially can expose or hazardous to the workers or to the environment in the workplace. With your existing control cannot cope, better you eliminate the hazards. Eliminate, you mean hapuskan. You keluarkan terus. Okay, that the top, the highest hierarchy in the control measure. If the hazards can very dangerous, then you can eliminate it. Better you eliminate. This is the highest hierarchy of control of the in the risk management. Okay, you eliminate, you hapus the hazard. But logically, practically in industry, for example, we're talking about noise exposure that can cause NIHL, noise-induced hearing loss, to the workers who are exposed. For example, in automotive, in stamping, die and stamping operation. It generates a lot of noisy exposure and cause kebisingan, kebingitan, can cause noise-induced hearing loss, hearing impairments to the employee. If you can say eliminate, no need, no need the die cast, die and stamping machine. No, in industry they need the process using the die and stamp machine. So we cannot eliminate it. So we go to the second hierarchy. But I give you an example. In Malaysia, we already banned the asbestos. You know asbestos? Okay, asbestos. Okay, asbestos, we have policy bans in Malaysia. Okay, so basically last in early 70s, 80s, the asbestos have been used in the roofing system for the low-cost housing. Because the asbestos have heat resistant. Okay, it's a cheapest and high resistant. But the problem is when the roof have been damaged, broken out, it will disperse the fibers, the asbestos fibers, and the fibers is very hazardous. When we're talking about the time weighted average for 8-hour exposure, is considered 1 milligram per meter cubic, milligram per meter cubic. It's very dangerous into. Then can got asbestosis and lung pneumoconiosis. Okay, lung infection due to the asbestos exposure. So we totally ban the blue asbestos and white asbestos. So you can eliminate because you have alternative material replacing the asbestos in the roofing system. But if you cannot remove, cannot do elimination, you go to the second hierarchy. What we call, you can be isolated, can use isolation, or you can do segregation, or you can use substitution. You boleh mengasingkan, memisahkan, ataupun you boleh gantikan dengan bahan yang less hazardous. What we call substitution, isolation, and segregation. You just add up segregation. Usually I put number 2, number 3, and add up for segregation in the second step of hierarchy of control. Okay? It means when you do substitution, you ganti from the high hazardous to less hazardous substances. Instead of using 100% of alcohol concentration, you only use only 70% of alcohol concentration. But maybe you said you agree that the effect of getting is very less and less. So you are from, for example, that paint, cat rumah, cat dinding, from the chemical-based paint to the water-based paint. Even though there is some risk on paint because chemical inside the paint, but water-based be proven less hazardous to the hair hazard. If you cannot do elimination, you cannot do substitution, you cannot do the isolation, you cannot do the segregation, you go to the third step of hierarchy of control, the lowest scale, middle, engineering control. What it mean engineering control? Kawalan kejuruteraan. Any kind of element kejuruteraan. For example, okay, you are using compressor. From the highly noise compressor, bahasa Melayu they call bejana tekanan tidak berapi. I'm not very sure in Indonesia, but compressor, air compressor, then they use silencer, for example, for a new technology. Or you are using the exhaust ventilation system, general ventilation system. You're using the silencer, using impactor and so on. This is what I call engineering control. You're using from the manual power tool. You gunakan screw manually, but you replace with the mobile, personal, motorized drilling or screw, for example. Automation. This is what I call engineering control. And engineering control, this is a practical, is wide use in the industry. But if you cannot use the engineering control, you go to the lower step. Now, the fourth hierarchy is the administrative control, kawalan pentadbiran. You're giving a training, awareness campaign, you put a poster, you have a competent person, you have permit to work, you have do a monitoring system and so on. Okay, and the last result, if hierarchy from the first, elimination, segregation, isolation, engineering control, administrative control, you cannot be done. The last result, the last method is PPE. What is PPE? Personal protective equipment. This is the last result. Remember, when I said last result, last action, it means when you think all the system cannot put in place, maybe the high cost, you doesn't have any budget, whatever the factors, the last one, then you only use the PPE. But this is the worst, the lowest effective of the hierarchy of control. If you can eliminate, you can eliminate those. That's better. But usually practical in industry, when you want to mitigate, when you want to control the risk, basically you have combination. What I say complementary action. You have combination of substitution plus isolation, segregation, engineering control, administrative control, and PPE. For example, now in COVID, for example, in UTM, in mine, okay? Before I'm the lecturer, docent in UTM. Before that, I working from home. Now, starting last week, I have to go to work. Now in my office setting. Okay, but before I enter into UTM, we have the system in handphone, ETAP system, where the system said you have to declare you doesn't have any symptom of coughing, fever, flu, and so on. You think, okay, and they have the green zone. If you have yellow zone, you cannot allow to enter the UTM. You have to work from home. Before you enter at the gate, the security will check your temperature, will check your system, whether this is a green or the yellow. If you are the yellow, you cannot enter the faculty, kantor. Same imply with the contractor and the student. And here, if I doesn't have any lecture physically, I have to do online system. So I have a various hierarchy of control, from using the PPE, from using the administrative control, engineering control, isolation, segregation, and so on. So basically in industry, we use combination of hierarchy of control. Ya, terus Bapak?
Ya, jadi ini adalah hierarki pengendalian bahaya ya. Nah, kalau kita melihat kata hierarki itu seperti hierarki perundang-undangan ya, itu tuh dari atas ke bawah, nggak bisa dibolak-balik ya. Jadi yang paling atas itu hierarkinya apa? Yang paling atas adalah eliminasi. Eliminasi berarti menghilangkan bahayanya. Nah, bagaimana caranya? Ya, contohnya tadi dengan membuat desain suatu peralatan atau satu mesin yang lebih aman. Misalnya ya, kalau misalnya orang mengangkat beban lebih dari 20 kg, ada resiko musculoskeletal disorder, ya, atau misalnya gangguan tulang belakang. Nah, bisa nggak kita menghilangkannya? Ya bisa, misalnya dengan menggunakan forklift. Nah, berarti kita sudah melakukan eliminasi. Gitu. Kemudian langkah yang kedua adalah melakukan substitusi atau penggantian bahaya. Nah, ini diberi contoh tadi misalnya penggunaan bahan kimia berbahaya, misalnya penggunaan solvent atau pelarut, ya, misalnya pelarut yang menggunakan pelarut-pelarut yang mudah terbakar, diganti dengan pelarut-pelarut yang berbahan dasar air, gitu. Atau misalnya tadi Pak Azwan memberikan contoh, misalnya penggunaan atap ya. Dulu atap itu terbuat dari asbes. Nah, asbes itu kan ternyata sangat berbahaya untuk kesehatan. Ya, sehingga asbes tersebut kemudian diganti dengan bahan yang lebih aman terhadap kesehatan. Itu namanya substitusi. Kemudian yang ketiga adalah isolasi. Mengisolasi suatu bahaya dari pekerja. Nah, apa contohnya? Misalnya pelindung mesin misalnya. Atau misalnya dibuat konstruksi, misalnya ada pagar begitu, sehingga bahaya itu tidak langsung memapar kepada pekerja. Kemudian yang keempat adalah engineering control atau pengendalian secara teknik. Nah, pengendalian secara teknik ini dapat dilakukan dengan modifikasi suatu peralatan. Ya, sebagai contohnya tadi, misalnya instalasi local exhaust ventilation atau LEV atau ventilasi industri misalnya ya. Atau misalnya tadi Pak Azwan memberi contoh, misalnya kalau ada bahaya kebisingan di tempat kerja, misalnya bisa dengan melakukan teknik peredaman bunyi. Nah, itu masuk pada engineering control. Kemudian berikutnya yang kelima adalah pengendalian secara administratif. Misalnya tadi permit to work gitu ya, kemudian pekerja itu diberikan pelatihan. Ya, kemudian misalnya di tempat kerja itu dipasang poster-poster ya, poster-poster terkait dengan promosi K3, itu masuk kepada pengendalian administratif. Dan yang terakhir adalah penggunaan PPE atau APD, alat pelindung diri. Nah, yang perlu digarisbawahi di sini bahwa yang paling efektif itu yang mana? Yang paling efektif yang paling atas adalah eliminasi. Kalau bisa bahaya itu dieliminasi atau dihilangkan. Tetapi tadi disampaikan bahwa pengendalian suatu pengendalian itu tidak serta-merta bisa dilaksanakan. Contoh misalnya ya, ada mesin kemudian bising. Apakah mesinnya dimatikan? Tentu tidak memungkinkan. Kalau nggak mati mesinnya tentu produksi nggak jalan. Hingga kita bisa ke langkah berikutnya. Ini yang cukup efektif adalah substitusi, isolasi, pengendalian teknik. Sementara ini yang paling kurang efektif di antara hierarki ini adalah pengendalian secara administratif dan penggunaan alat pelindung diri. Tetapi ini bisa kita kombinasikan. ya, kita bisa mengkombinasikan antara pengendalian substitusi, isolasi, engineering, administratif bisa kita lakukan secara bersamaan begitu.
Ya, tapi harus ingat pada saya I keep remain to all student who are hearing ni. When you do try to do the risk management, please avoid to recommend the first step is PPE. Okay, remember in Malaysia for those do certification in the safety and health officer program for NIOSH competent person, they will be fail. Okay, fail the program competence if you put the PPE in the primary. Remember I said that PPE is the last result. It's very mandatory. It's a failure when you suggest PPE in the first step. You must put the highest hierarchy first, and the last, when there is no control, PPE is the last result. Okay, harus diingat. Ini satu benda yang penting bagi kamu. You have to remember PPE is the last result. Okay.
Ya. Jadi yang perlu ditekankan oleh Pak Azwan tadi bahwa di dalam sebagai seorang nanti kalian sebagai seorang praktisi K3 begitu ya, dalam pengendalian itu jangan meletakkan APD itu sebagai yang pertama, tetapi penggunaan alat pelindung diri itu adalah pilihan yang paling terakhir gitu. Jadi jangan apa-apa itu langsung APD begitu. APD adalah the last option gitu, opsi yang paling terakhir.
Ya. Yeah. Okay, this is a vertical hierarchy control. You have the first one is the horizontal model. This is verticals. Okay, so vertical you have to consider whether the hazard from the source, you need to control from the source, or you need to control from the pathway, or you need to control. So there is the step you can see from the source. Either you can eliminate, you can substitute, and so on by using. This is engineering control. Okay, they combine enclosure. You do modify the process. This is engineering control. You do substitution and so on. Okay. How about the control at the pathway? Laluan. Control at the laluan. You can do housekeeping, general ventilations, and so on. Okay. Or how you control from the receiver. So receiver. Okay. How you control from receiver? The last step is PPE. Okay. That's why when you said only the PPE, if you recommend only the PPE, the source can directly, for example, like here, chemical can inhale directly to the workers. So it means the workers, even though he have or she have the PPE, but the intensity, concentration, the probability of the chemical inhale into the system are higher. I'll give you an example. Okay, maybe you see a movie, American movie. Okay, you see a scene of 1 or 2, 3 person mines. Okay, kamu panggil mines apa tu? Periuk api, yang bom. Okay, they want to refuse a EAD or bombastic or bomb, mines. You see, they operate then suddenly blow. They are using a proper PPE, but still get injured. Still deaths from the explosions. So this is what they call how you explain the PPE is the ineffective method. So you need to do another highest methods. Ya Pak?
Ya, jadi ini adalah prinsip dari pengendalian resiko. Kita mengendalikan itu dari 3 tahap. Yang pertama itu dari sumbernya, kemudian airspace ini adalah jalurnya ya, kemudian receiver itu penerimanya. Ya, jadi kalau dari sumbernya misalnya dengan substitusi, ya, modifikasi proses, dengan memasang local exhaust ventilation, dengan melakukan isolasi, ya. Kemudian RP ini dilewat perantaranya dengan apa? Misalnya housekeeping yang baik, kemudian ventilasi dilusi, kemudian yang terakhir adalah di penerima, di pekerjanya, ya. Nah, bagaimana cara menguranginya? Bisa dengan melakukan training, pelatihan, dan edukasi, kemudian pengaturan shift kerja, kemudian penggunaan alat pelindung diri. Ya, tadi dicontohkan oleh Pak Azwan ya, walaupun misalnya seorang pekerja itu telah memakai APD, tetapi ketika langsung berhubungan dengan suatu bahaya yang tidak dikontrol dengan di sumbernya, ya itu akan, walaupun sudah memakai APD, seseorang itu bisa saja terluka. Jadi penggunaan APD itu adalah yang paling least efektif, yang paling kurang efektif di antara pengendalian yang lainnya. Jadi yang lainnya tetap harus dilaksanakan. Jadi secara bersamaan juga harus dilakukan.
Yeah. Okay. This is a few slides from the risk management, and I go to summaries for the NA. So, what are you consider before you implement the risk control? Oh, you see, from the elimination to the PPE. So, the consideration, number one consideration is try to review measure regularly. Because, for example, now for a student, I think in your university as a student, when you go to the university, you have to wear a paper mask, surgical mask, what I call a paper mask. Okay, so this is very effective PPE. But if you want to operate the chemicals, you cannot use a paper mask. You need to use a proper respirator. You see, so you have to looking at the procedure, or maybe, for example, okay, in university, in my scenario in UTEP, now the students are not allowed to enter to the university. So next week, even though this week, they are only allowed for first year student and the final year student. We strictly operate SOP. But for those, they have to stay in the hostel. And there is strict regulation. Only if you want to go to do experiment to the lab, that's all. Then after that, if you on the practical, non-practical learning, theoretical, you have to do online in your hostel. So you have to review measurement regularly in order to ensure the level of safety standard keep in the safe and progressive. And you need to modify if necessary, if other factors has been changed, machinery has been repaired, a new system come out, new workers and so on. And of course, you need to comply with the regulations, your international or national regulation in OSH regarding on the hazard that you're exposed. And this consideration of risk control for the management, for the organization, they want good management practice. Because when you have good management in OSH, productivity, quality, sale will parallelly increasing with the safety and health. So that's why risk control, risk assessment is very important. And you need to consider current state of knowledge. Talking about state of knowledge of what? For example, if there is a new regulation in the noise, like in Malaysia now, previously in the FMA required the maximum TWA for continuous for 8 hours is 85 decibel A. Now they are using a new amendment regulation, the 83 decibel. So you have to comply with the state of knowledge dynamics in the OSH. And also, you need to have proper documentations on all risk assessment, hierarchy, GSA, whatever method that you want to use. Include all the report to the organization who are required for enforcement. For example, from the Department of Occupational Safety and Health, from the OSH services, for example, from the standards that who require MS 1722, ISO 40,000, 80,000, 90,000, and so on, and others that required for your benchmarking standard in OSH. Ya Pak, teruskan.
Ya, nah ini adalah beberapa pertimbangan ya yang harus kita pikirkan di dalam pengimplementasian pengendalian risiko ya. Yang pertama itu adalah meninjau ulang tindakan pengendalian yang sudah kita lakukan. Ya, kita perlu memodifikasi kalau dibutuhkan. Ya. Tadi diberi contoh oleh Pak Azwan, gitu ya. Kalau misalnya kita pakai masker ya, misalnya surgical mask ya, misalnya masker medis, ya untuk virus, bakteri mungkin itu akan efektif begitu. Tapi kalau misalnya kalian bekerja misalnya dengan bahan kimia, tentu APD dengan surgical mask itu tidak pas ya. Tapi yang lebih pas tentu kalian harus menggunakan respirator. Ya. Kemudian yang kedua adalah dalam pengendalian risiko itu kita harus comply ya kepada peraturan perundangan baik di level nasional maupun di level internasional. Kemudian juga harus mempertimbangkan update ilmu pengetahuan. Nah, ini sangat penting juga sebagai seorang praktisi nantinya bahwa ilmu pengetahuan itu dinamis ya, ada perubahan ya. Sebagai contoh tadi misalnya di Malaysia dulu bahwa nilai ambang batas untuk kebisingan itu 85 ya Pak Azwan ya.
Ya.
85, tetapi yang terbaru itu diubah ya, sudah berubah menjadi 83 desibel. Nah, itu kan ada perubahan. Nah, oleh sebab itu perubahan itu dari update ilmu pengetahuan yang terbaru. Kemudian di dalam pengendalian risiko ini juga perlu untuk dilaporkan kepada organisasi-organisasi terkait gitu ya. Kalau di kita tentu laporan-laporan ini selain diberikan kepada manajemen, ya tentunya juga harus dilaporkan sebagai seorang ahli K3 ya ke Dinas Tenaga Kerja begitu. Kalau di kita.
Ya. Okay, kita pergi yang tadi. Same example that previous. Okay, step 3 is risk management and risk control. You know that this is the first step is the HI. Hazard indication. Step 2, you estimate risk rating, risk assessment, and the risk control. So you already classified the work activity. You know the hazard that occur from this activity, and what are the effect of the health to the health. For example, this is for fall persons. There might be a few classification that have a different hazard. You may refer to the guideline that Pak Otomi will give to you. Okay. And the step 2, you do a semi-quantitative method. You have phi and multiply over phi, likelihood and severity. This is very highest because existing control measure is not put in place. Poor management. There's no unsafe act, and also there is also unsafe condition. So phi multiply over phi, 25, very highest, the highest. And how to control? So kalau macam ni, you make first decision, you have to stop the work. You have to spot the work. The supervisors, the contractor, the head of supervisor, kamu panggil bapak penyelia, to call, stop the work first. Or you, for example, for monitor the company, no, you cannot do this job. Ask supervisor as the worker to stop the work first and to imply the hierarchy of control immediately. Because 25 is the red zone, the highest calculation. So before you do again this activity, you need to do, like for example, crawling boards, right? What they call scaffolding, perancah, working and height, maybe competency training. But di sini mungkin ni kalau misalnya kontraktor besar-besar 10 tingkat, 20 tingkat, perlukan professional competency, working in height, procedure, safety operating procedure, body harness, safety net, and so on. So after this, after the workers or the contractor or your employee do already provided, then they are allowed to work. Then is it risk assessment and risk control has been done? No, you need to review again because it might be they are not proper imply certain step procedure, or they use the procedure but they not using effectiveness. Mungkin cara pakai tidak betul. Contohnya dia pakai paper mask, tapi dia letak di dagu sahaja. Contohnya lah COVID. Kan tidak betul prosedurnya, caranya. Okay, jadi salah. Meletakkan satu benda yang betul kepada tempat yang salah. Jadi tak betul lah. Okay, so you have to do a proper management, and this is very practical. This is practical, can be done by the contractor or by your employer, by your employee. Okay, so in this process, you can see, identify the hazard, how you can recognize, put numbers, quantify, estimate the risk, check the existing control measure, and if there is a potential can cause harm or injury, damage by the property, machinery, and so on, you recommend, manage the practical way, the easy way, effective, systematically control measure. Ya, Bapak teruskan.
Ya, ini sebagai contoh ya, misalnya tadi pekerjaan ya orang yang sedang memperbaiki atap gitu ya. Nah, langkah yang pertama tadi adalah mengidentifikasi bahaya begitu ya. Kemudian setelah diidentifikasi bahaya, maka langkah yang kedua adalah mengkalkulasi risikonya. Nah, di sini kita bisa lihat bahwa risikonya tuh 25 ya. Ini masuk kepada risiko tinggi. Sementara kita lihat lagi bagaimana pengendalian yang sudah dilakukan. Ternyata belum ada. Nah, kita bisa lihat bahwa risikonya sangat tinggi sehingga pilihan yang harus dilakukan adalah melakukan di stop ya pekerjaannya. Nah, kemudian setelah di stop dipastikan dulu pengendalian-pengendalian yang akan dilakukan. Jadi karena ini resikonya sangat tinggi, intolerable, ini pekerjaan di stop dulu, maka butuh pengendalian-pengendalian risiko. Nah, apa contohnya di sini itu? Misalnya ya harus dipastikan dulu ada crawling board ya, kalau di kita disebut dengan scaffolding, atau misalnya perancah ya, dibuat perancah dulu misalnya. Kemudian working at height prosedur, misalnya prosedur bekerja di ketinggian gitu ya. Kemudian penggunaan misalnya full body harness ya, atau misalnya safety net ya. Nah, ini dipastikan dulu. Nah, kalau ini sudah ada baru kemudian pekerjaan kemudian baru bisa dilanjutkan kembali. Kemudian apakah setelah pengendalian yang sudah kita tetapkan itu sudah dilaksanakan, apakah sudah selesai begitu saja? Tidak. Ya, pengendalian yang sudah kita terapkan itu pun perlu ditinjau ulang kembali, perlu direview ya. Ya, misalnya seperti dicontohkan tadi, misalnya ya sudah ada masker gitu ya, tetapi maskernya dipasang di dagu. Nah, tentu ini tidak pas. Nah, sehingga butuh tentu kita memberikan edukasi, memberikan training lagi kepada pekerja ya. Jadi pengendalian yang sudah kita terapkan itu ketika sudah dilakukan tidak serta-merta selesai. Tapi pengendalian yang sudah dilakukan perlu ditinjau ulang lagi. Apakah sudah efektif untuk menurunkan resikonya?
Yeah. So when you do risk assessment to check and balance, that's why in PDCA, plan, do, check. Check is risk assessment and actions. You have to double check whether the do is proper way. That's why, in order that when you check, we want the 25, the probability and likelihood fire and fire severity will hope, we hope with the control measure management that you manage the proper way, it will be lower from 5, lower from the green, zona merah, kepada zona hijau lebih baik. Kalau tidak, mungkin pada zona kuning. But you need to monitor cautiously. That's why the ultimate of risk assessment and risk management is try to reduce, for example, like this, from 25 to maybe 4, maybe 2 by 2, maybe 2 by 3, maybe 2 by 4, for example. Kuning, zona kuning atau zona hijau. Kalau boleh berzona hijau, to this green zone, it's very good that we are encouraged. But if you have the control measure, but only at the green, yellow zone, zona kuning, itu saja yang kamu mampu, for example. But you have to monitor again. If you have kind of in the future, if you can lowering down, that's better. Because you cannot implement. There is some talking about the budget, restriction on a certain thing that you not effort to do, but wisely that you have the step by step in order to eliminate these hazards. Okay, remember, mungkin saya dahulu masa muda-muda, mungkin kamu ada main satu game di dalam telefon, ada tak dulu dia panggil Clash of Clans, COC? Atikah ada main COC tak dulu? Kumala ada main COC tak game? Clash of Clans? Melania, Vega ada main COC? Angkat tangan kalau main.
Ada yang pernah main?
Tidak, Pak.
Okay, konsep COC.
Ada, Pak.
Okay. I also play COC apa ni at the younger age lah. But I implement COC in terms of how can you use the hierarchy of control. Remember, at early stage pada permulaannya kamu main COC itu, kamu cuma diberikan tembok wall from kayu, made from the woods. The enemy, only one person enemy can destroy the wall easily. So what happened? In order to secure your property from loss, you will enhance from the wood wall to the stone wall, concrete wall, gold wall, and others. In order from one enemy to penetrate, they need to have more enemy to destroy the wall. But what happened? Suddenly, the dragons from the air attack inside the wall. So you need to have some mechanism. That's why isolation, what we call complementary methods. You combination of the isolation, your recommendation must be full package. Here, with engineering control, with PPE, with administrative control, isolation, when they put together, you have very strong OSH management system. That's the thing that you have to think when you try to propose a management on the risk, control the risk. Okay. Documentation, I just keep documentation. Okay. This is standard form that we use recommended in the guideline from the Department of OSH Malaysia regarding the hierarchy. You can get from the attachment that Pak Otomi will give to you. Okay. Basically, this is very important. We have 3 steps. Hazard identification, that we have 4 columns. We have numbers, work activity, hazard, and which can cause effect. For example, the workers who are replacing the roof, for example. What are the hazards? You put maybe sharp nail, sub edge, hot hot exposure, slippery, and so on. Maybe this one, kalau hot, heat stress, sharp edge, nail injury to the fingers, feet, and so on. And the second one is the existing control measure that already put in place. If there is no PPE, no procedure, nil. No PPE, but you have specified. If no PPE, what PPE that required? Not wearing a paper mask. Not wearing a there is no not wearing a respirator. Do manual handling, not proper, and so on. Then you has to estimate risk rating, likelihood, and severity. 5 by 5, then you calculate. Risk is 5 by 5 is 25. So this is a risk assessment. And the last one, recommended the logical using the hierarchy of control. You have to mention. But in this one, control measure, when you put administrative control, kalau I give you 0 mark, or maybe 10 mark, I give you 1 mark saja, because you not explain what are the administrative control that you want to propose, the logical, the practical that you want to propose. And remember, PPE is the last result. Siapa letak PPE di atas, kosong, fail. This is the arguments lah. It's very important. And another one is a PIC, person in charge. Siapa perlu buat? Contoh, not wearing a PPE. The person in charge, Vega sebagai operator yang tak pakai. Dr. Otomi sebagai penyelia. Kalau itu di situ. Dan masa dia kena buat. Okay. So this is the standard form hierarchy from the DOSH lah. It might be in Indonesia, it might be different, but particularly they have 3 steps: HI, RA, and RC or RM. Okay, ya Bapak?
Ya, jadi ini adalah from hierarchy ya. Ini from identifikasi bahaya dan penilaian risiko. Pada dasarnya bahwa form ini terdiri dari 3 langkah. Yang pertama, identifikasi bahaya. Apa aktivitasnya? apa bahayanya, kemudian apa yang dapat menyebabkannya ya, which can cause atau efeknya apa. Kemudian langkah yang kedua adalah analisis risiko. Ya, apa pengendalian yang sudah ada, kemudian kita menilai likelihood atau kemungkinannya, menilai severity atau keparahannya sehingga bisa didapatkan tingkat risikonya. Sedangkan langkah yang ketiga adalah kita menetapkan pengendalian risiko. Jadi ini recommended-nya control measure atau rekomendasi tindakan pengendalian yang kita berikan. Nah, dan sangat penting juga untuk menentukan PIC atau person in charge atau di bahasa kita itu sebagai penanggung jawabnya dari tindakan pengendalian yang sudah kita rekomendasikan. Nah, ini contoh format standar dari HIRA-RC. Di Indonesia juga sama Bapak untuk formatnya lebih
bagus. Tapi yang atas tuh sangat penting, the most important juga. So we're talking about the demographic, who your team doing the hierarchy, the dates, reviews, what company, what section that you need. This is very important because each unit there is certain different work activity and different hazard and different risks that you need to do a different kind of risk assessment. Remember, when there is a what we call I just add up, if there is a similar kind of work unit, what meaning work unit? You have exactly nearly similar kind of the person, similar kind of the machinery, similar kind of operation that you use, work activities are similar, only you can use just one hierarchy, one form sahaja. But if you have not similar, the work unit is very different. It means totally the operation is totally different, chemical that they use are very different, procedure are quite different. So you have to use more than one risk assessment. For example, now, if my activity is in my room, and another docent, my sahabat, also the same, even though different person, but he also have a similar kind of work setting, work activity. So I can consider only one risk assessment, what we call generic risk assessment. Generic risk assessment. Yang sama saja. But if another my friend, he are using a welding activity. So like me, I have different activity. So it should be have two different risk assessment. I don't think talking about the HIRAC, GSA or GHA and so on. But this I want to show you. You need to do two different risk assessment because different work unit and work activity. Ya Pak?
Ya. Nah, jadi sampaikan Pak Azwan, jangan lupa nih yang bagian atas ya. Jadi di dalam HIRAC itu ya perlu juga ya lokasinya ya, kemudian departemennya ya, kemudian tanggal dilaksanakan, kalau misalnya ada tinjauan ulang tanggalnya ini perlu dituliskan gitu. Kemudian dalam penilaian HIRAC ini ya, dalam penilaian resiko ini, kalau pekerjaannya sama ya, lebih kurang sama, itu satu saja ya yang disebut dengan generic risk assessment atau penilaian risiko secara umum. Kalau kegiatannya sama-sama misalnya contoh ya, sama-sama mengajar, itu cukup dengan satu HIRAC saja. Tetapi kalau pekerjaannya itu berbeda, nah itu perlu ada dua. Itu yang perlu ya. Jadi kalau itu memang dirasa operasionalnya sama, bahannya sama, itu cukup satu saja. Tetapi kalau misalnya ada memang perbedaan, nah itu harus dua dibuat. Walaupun beda lokasinya gitu ya.
Ya, okay. So another a few slide at the end of my presentation, I want to summarize how can we you can understanding the risk assessment and risk management in terms of picture that I will give to you. Okay, so this activity is giving, so activity is classified the activity. So this is a activity the operator or the feeder in the zoo, and his activity is giving a food to the animal. Okay, kalau ni siapa itu? Apa tu? Kalau we can know Agak-agak ini singa jantan ke singa betina ni? Ya, Wikan. Ada nama Wikan kan?
Kan mana Wikan?
Wikan. Sudahlah. Kita double check dulu. Wikan ada Wikan. Ini singa jantan ke singa betina ni?
Halo, silakan nyalakan.
Yang lain-lain?
Ya, jantan.
Oh, jantan. Okay, bagus-bagus, pandai. Okay, good. Okay, singa jantan. Okay, if you want to do the risk assessment, okay, you are the OSH, maybe you are the safety health officer in Jogja Zoo. You want to assess the procedure, and you see like this, the routine work. How can you do the risk assessment? Okay, now directly. Okay, so I want to show you how you can put the numbers of estimate the risk in order from the highest to the lowest one, from the zona merah kepada zona hijau, with some practical recommendations by using different kind of methods. Okay. Now, existing work activity, you can see work activity is feeding a food to the male lions in the zoo directly. Okay, as you see in the picture. So the hazard is the lions, or I can say fierce male lions. Okay, nama dia mungkin apa tu, Simba. Simba the white lion. Simba the lions. Okay, so what the health effect? Okay, you say maybe head injury, tapi in this case you can see fatal injury lah. Boleh maut kan, boleh mati lah, diterkam, digigit, dimakan. So existing control measure that you can see, only a cap, okay, a long sleeve, a shoes, or canvas. That's all. I see existing control measure that's the that he have been provided by the management. So when you see risk analysis, the likelihood that kebarangkalian this personnel diserang oleh harimau jantan ini tinggi ke rendah? Of course, tinggi kan? Kualitatif. But you put paling tinggi, biasalah kalau kamu dekat haiwan, singa contohnya berhadapan, tak ada apa-apa, of course dia akan terekam kamu, makan, mungkin matilah ataupun cedera parah. So you put 5 for example. In your experience, you put 5. But severity, it might be mati, you can put 5 juga. Tapi dia put 4. Why? Maybe heavy injury, mungkin dia boleh lepaskan, ada sistem dan sebagainya. Mungkin ada orang ada body system. So they put. So you calculate 5 by 4 is 20. When 20, you refer to the risk assessment metric is very high, 20. Okay. So recommend for the time being, PPE dia kata, or training, or suppose they put training first. Administrative control, then you put the PPE, explain what PPE. What PPE. So ini you need to elaborate. This is very wrong. Suppose PPE should be, please do a correction. PPE should be the last result. And you need to explain what training, what PPE. And PIC siapa dia? This one, mutu pada 2 Ogos. Progress telah dibuat, dijangka kena siap, pastikan 7 September kena siapkan 2 September daripada 2 Ogos, lama juga tu. Pastikan yang lain-lain perlu dibuat. Okay. Kemudian another, okay, you have another recommendation. Same, but here different. Using existing control measure, still personal protection. Pakai baju besi. Of course, likelihood that attack from the lion is still high, number 5. Still dia akan serang. But severity from 4 reduce kepada 3. Because it might be not too serious. Yes, maybe some injured, but not fatal. Maybe major or maybe moderate injury. So risk still lagi high, 5 by 3, 15, very high. And recommendation prepare opening, automatic opening, save SOP, training and so on. So still lagi the same person. You see, there is some differences. Mungkin Bapak nak translate ataupun explain.
Ya, ini Pak. Ada lagi setelah ini Pak mungkin sekalian.
Ya sekejap ya, ada teruskan. Saya teruskan sajalah.
Teruskan ya.
Okay. Now the third step. Tadi tak buat third step. Now still the same procedure, but the existing control measure not using the steel protective, but they also a special cage and opening. Only give the food from the outside, with minimal activity without going inside. But still likely, maybe the male lion will be attacked lah, because dia nampak makanan dia akan attack, mungkin dia sikit. Might be serious injury or minor injury, but still can be escaped. The workers can be escaped because it will bear from the cage and only on the outside operation sahaja. So the risk estimation is getting lower and lower. So now they are going to zona kuning. And recommendations, special cage, SOP, training, and so on. You see, only the minimal PPE sahaja, cap, like the previous one, the early one, without the steel ni. Kalau dia nak kenakan steel protection pun okay, tapi it's the high cost for the employer lah, because minimal impact. Okay, don't put too many unnecessary. Okay, so you have, this is what I call engineering control. You see, modification is engineering control. Still the same persons. Then we go to another one. You see, they put extra cage. So this is control at the pathway. You see, control at the pathway. See? So special case, SOP, training, segregated method, isolate method, special engineering. You see, not attack the workers. There might be less or maybe low, minor. Maybe dia cuma masuk sini mungkin tergelincir saja, tapi not been attacking by the male lions. Substitute, okay. So recommend, kalau di sini dia kata, okay, you see still the same PIC. And last kali, he can enter, give a food, but eliminate the hazard. Okay, Norma Mustika eliminate from male lion to Garfield. Tahu Garfield? Okay, cerita Garfield loh.
Tahu Pak. Okay, no.
So Garfield, very chubby, grumpy cat, not very danger. Okay, contohnya lah, this is a joke. Replace with the Garfield. So no worry. Okay, likelihood low, 1. Not minimal, likelihood been attacked by the Garfield. Garfield suka tidur sahaja. Dia tidur sahaja. Kita kasih makan baru dia datang. Dia pun tak nak serang. Severity pun tak ada. Dia cuma miau sahaja, tidur. Kalau dia lapar, dia makan. So lowest. Eliminate terus. But adakah zoo tu letak Garfield? Garfield mana ada, cerita kartun sahaja. Mesti ada lion. So it depends, like this is like called the example. How can you do risk management and risk control? Ya, Bapak.
Ya, tadi yang disampaikan oleh Pak Azwan, bagaimana step by step kita mengurangi atau mengendalikan risiko ya. Tadi sebagai contoh ya, misalnya ada misalnya di kebun binatang ya, ada singa begitu ya. Kemudian sudah memakai misalnya topi gitu ya, sudah memakai baju lengan panjang, tapi dia masuk ke dalam tadi, dia masuk yang pertama Pak ya, dia masuk ke dalam sebelumnya previous slide Pak Azwan, previous slide, ya oke. Nah ini dia ini dia memberikan makanan kepada singa begitu ya, bisa dilihat dia masuk ke dalam kandangnya. Nah ini kita bisa lihat bahwa resikonya tinggi ya, dari segi probabilitas untuk diserang oleh singa, dari segi keparahan juga ini sangat tinggi. Ya, lanjut.
Ya.
Nah, kemudian bisa masuk berikutnya yang kedua. Nah, dia ganti APD-nya. Kalau tadi hanya memakai baju lengan panjang, ini pakai bajunya besi gitu ya, bajunya besi. Nah, kita lihat bahwa tapi dia masih masuk ke dalam kandang. Dari segi likelihood-nya masih sama, masih sama-sama bisa diserang, tapi yang dikurangi di sini adalah keparahannya. Ya, kalau dia memakai baju besi dibandingkan dengan hanya memakai baju biasa, dari segi keparahan itu bisa berkurang. Tetapi dari risiko masih tinggi, tapi dari segi keparahan bisa dikurangi. Nah, lanjut lagi berikutnya dengan langkah yang ketiga dengan isolasi. Nah, isolasi ini dari segi severity-nya bisa berkurang karena dia sudah tidak masuk ke dalam kandang tetapi sudah di luar kandang, tapi kemungkinan diserang itu masih ada. Nah, tapi ini sudah masuk ke medium. Nah, lanjut langkah yang keempat dengan engineering control. Jadi ini ada, nah ini dibuat ada barrier, ada penghalang, tidak langsung ya, tidak langsung tangannya itu ketemu sama si singanya. Jadi ada penghalang atau barrier. Nah, ini tentunya dari segi probability ini bisa diturunkan lagi nih dari 3 ke 2 gitu ya. Kemudian dari severity juga pasti akan turun. Nah, dan terakhir ya udah dengan substitusi. Ya caranya ya udah yang dirawat bukan singa gitu ya, tapi kucing. Ya, kalau ini sudah kita lakukan tentu likelihood-nya jelas berkurang untuk diserang ya. Karena jelas dia bukan binatang yang buas gitu ya. Kemudian dari severity-nya juga kalau kita diterkam oleh singa dengan diterkam kucing tentu dari severity berkurang ya. Ini adalah berbagai macam cara pola pikir kita ya, bagaimana kita menurunkan probabilitasnya, juga bagaimana kita menurunkan keparahannya. Jadi kita memikirkan berbagai macam cara. Jadi memang dengan menggunakan APD itu memang paling tadi tidak adalah kurang efektif. Ya, engineering, isolasi, dan substitusi ini adalah yang paling efektif ya. Kita harus bisa melakukan kombinasi ya complementary dari berbagai macam pengendalian yang ada tadi.
Ya, kamu boleh rujuk kepada guideline of IRAC that Pak Otomi akan beri pada kamu daripada DOSH. Mereka ada beri contoh-contoh yang sangat menarik untuk form ini untuk anda lihat dan faham bagaimana penaksiran risiko ataupun risk assessment and risk management itu dilakukan secara industrial Kerana apa? It might be some of you are not experience doing know the reality in the industry. So there is term of activity thing that you doesn't know, but for basic understanding, you can see at your surrounding while you're in the classes, at your homes, at your classroom, at your laboratoriums, for basic understanding what happened when you. That's why when you go to magang, what they call industrial attachment, then you can know different kind of industry, different kind of factory, different kind of section. It might be different kind of hazard, operational, and the risk potential. Then you can use either you can use a hierarchy, JSA, and it depends on the usage of the and what are the objective or the risk assessment that you can do. Okay, so basically, as a summarize, okay, first in basic OSH management. Yes, you need to well-versed, deep understanding in identify the hazards. You have to know definition of hazard. You have to know definition of the risk. Then after that, you're able to know how to identify the hazards. If you cannot fail to identify the hazards, this is chemical or this is physical. What happened? Radiation, non-radiation. This is under fall in what? Physical ke, chemical ke, whatever. Then you fail to identify the first step of the hazard identification. You have to, know how to do the risk assessment. So risk assessment is doing part. You are do whatever has been planned. You have to confirm, check. You know how what is likelihood, severity. You doesn't make sense to put, oh, this is 5, this is 4. Okay, because you need to discuss with your team, your investigator, your team of hierarchy that have expertise, because you need to consider the frequency, the pathway, the concentration, the duration, the exposure, type of hazard. From that, everybody will give opinion, put numbers, then you have leverage. You get the numbers, then you average then you get exactly amount. Then you put 5, 3, and so on. Based on the judgment, and also the severity. Then you need to have, from the risk assessment, you need to have a proper to control, manage the risk. And after that, if there is some changes of technology, changes of the workers, any kind of unexpected changes, you need to review it. And it depends, all the risk management and risk assessment, the objective is to comply with regulation. This is the utmost objective. And the second one, to protect the workers, organization from the injury, accident, occupational disease, and industrial accident, and also to increase the productivity and quality of the businesses. And the risk assessment allow the organization to mitigate the hazards in the workplaces. And remember, hierarchy control, PPE is the last result. Result ni dalam bahasa Inggeris ni ada dua makna. Satu, tindakan yang terakhir, langkah terakhir. Satu lagi adalah pusat hotel, perangilan, tempat peristirahatan yang terakhir. Itu bukan hotel, itu bukan rehat. Ini ada langkah yang terakhir PPE. Ya Bapak, kalau student Bapak letak recommendation PPE yang pertama, yang letak terus pada nombor 1, Bapak failkan dia kerana ini salah. Ingat Itu saja quite hampir 2 jam ya Bapak. I hope the explanation that I give to you, insyaallah can you can absorb, can apply, can be understanding, and I hope make doa for you that you pass for your pengajian, lulus, and become the OSH practitioner after you graduated. It's not quantity, is quality. Become SHO, a good quality SHO, kerana Allah, kerana kerja, kerana negara. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum Bapak dengan rakan-rakan.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much to Dr. Azwan to share his knowledge and experience. It's very interesting and comprehensive about occupational risk assessment and risk management. It's been 3 hours. We start at 8 and now at 11.
Yeah.
So do we open the question and answer or?
Yeah. Saya ada nampak Pak di bahagian chatting tu ada soalan. Mungkin saya boleh jawab sedikit.
Yeah, maybe because we have a limited time. Okay. So maybe it until 11.
Okay. Yang pertama daripada Rina Faizani, pertanyaan mengenai bahagian risk assessment. Ada review risk assessment dilakukan external dan external and internal changes. Adakah dua saling berhubungan? Ya, kemungkinan dia ada perubahan antara internal dan external. It depend yang mana yang datang, yang ada. Contohnya kalau misalnya dalaman ada di replacing kerana dia sakit, pekerja sakit, kemudian ada pekerja yang menggantikannya, new rakan yang sahabat yang lakukan. This is internal changes that you need to do a risk assessment whether this new replacing operator has been trained or not. Is it he familiar or she familiar with the same work that has been done by previous employee? Okay. And external, if there is changing on the law regulations, changing of technology, then you have to follow. Okay. Basically, it depends on situations whether changes become the internal or externals. Okay. And then I want from Dina Nurul Arafah. Okay, sekarang ni dinar emas Sekarang ni harga emas di Malaysia pun turun. Saya pun pelabur dalam emas juga. Okay, ini mesti Bapak ni ada, mungkin kamu dilahir di Padang Arafah kah? Okay, Dina Nurul, I'm just joking lah. Okay, what are the obstacle and fail common faced by implementing of industrial project also manufacturing in Malaysia? Pertama dari segi peringkat organisasi dulu, majikan. Kita tahu ada majikan yang tidak comply, tetapi agak minimal. It's very minimal, particularly for the employer. We also have the illegal manufacturing, yang tidak berdaftar pun ada. Cabaran yang paling utama adalah SMEs, small medium and enterprises industry, because they have low budget, but they will also have the hazards. But in Malaysia, we also, even though we are not compulsory to put SHO in the SME industry, compared with the major industry, we have 10 that covers in the OSHA. But for SME, we also have introduced it. I think in last 2 years or last 2 years, the DOSH already implement what we call OSH coordinator, same like SHO, and they can go a few days, 3 days to DOSH, be certified for the OSH coordinator, but the level is not the same like OSH SHO, safety and health officers. I'm also the OSH coordinator, competent trainer. It gives opportunity to the SME also to come together to implement safety culture in the workplaces. Okay, the workers sama juga. Ada yang workers yang terlalu otai, we call otai lah. Semua dia tak nak pakai PPE dan sebagainya, tak ikut, ada juga, tapi quite minimal. Because the law and the awareness of safety in the work in Malaysia already put in place. So from the statistic from years to years now, the incidents of industrial accidents, occupational diseases becoming low and low. Last time it's about 50 case, 50,000 case, now reduced to 25 to 20 K per year. This is a totally decreasement or reduction of the industrial accidents. Okay, from Ika Nur Findiana tentang method identifikasi bahaya. Okay, contoh dua pekerjaan yang bisa digunakan metod identifikasi bahaya adalah FMA, JSA dan sebagainya. Okay, like I mentioned you before, if the work activity less than 12 or 10, we are consider, for example, like in your laboratoriums, you have the laboratorium labs, biology dan sebagainya, very small, a few steps, then you can see job safety analysis or job health analysis. If, for example, you want to study on the effect to the health, then you go to job health analysis. If you want to see the operational, technical, on the safety effect, technical, then you use job safety analysis. But it's very complex, you use hierarchy. But in petroleum, it might be you can use the very complex one, only the operative, you can use HAZOPs, or you can use fault tree analysis and so on. Okay. From Wela Safitri, berapa besar pengaruh manajemen risiko terhadap perusahaan organisasi diterapkan atau tidak diterapkan? Sangat besar. Kerana apa? Management, kalau you are very poor in management in OSH, it means you lost your productivity due to, contohnya kalau pekerja accidents, you have to pay a lot of compensations, billing to the hospital, insurance. It might be pekerja boleh saman, can sue the company. I think you already learned of the theory of iceberg, direct cost and indirect cost. The iceberg bongkar ais, okay, yang bawah tu lebih besar impactnya, dampaknya. This is unseen cost, indirect cost is very biggest, and you need to solve the problem. Okay, itu sangat penting pengaruh management, because company akan lihat keuntungan. Kalau ada kemalangan, dia akan reduce. Bayangkan kalau constructions 3 days, 5 days stop the work, it lost millions of work. So it's very crucial because they have to progress work daily basis, progress work, especially in the construction. Okay, saya ada 2 minit lagi. Norma Mustika ini tentang dalam penilaian risiko ada 3 tahap. Okay, seterusnya pertanyaan, solusi alternatif kita lakukan kalau hal tak terduga dalam posisi luar risiko yang telah dinilai bahkan menyebabkan faktor. Okay, good. The word provoke kita gunakan expert, please face expect to be expected. That's why kita ada mitigation plan. Contohnya, very simple, di tempat universiti kamu ada tak buat fire drill? Kan kebakaran, kamu panggil apa? Bomba, firefighter datang. Tiap tahun, tiap bulan di asrama kamu buat firefighting, fire drill. Tapi kebakaran tak pernah berlaku pun selama ini di universiti contohnya. Tapi kenapa kita buat? Kerana memberi kefahaman atau understanding the way bila berlaku kebakaran apa perlu buat. Sudah ada. Kemudian bomba akan audit tempat kamu. Oh ni tak ada, tolong enhance. Jadi bila berlaku kebakaran akan datang, kamu tahu apa dia buat. Itu langkah dia. And that's why always give a training awareness to into your system. Okay. Dan satu lagi, Anissa Jannatun, izin tanya, kita saat inspeksi, buat inspection di tempat kerja, langkah-langkah diperlukan untuk investigasi kecelakaan, apa penyebab dari kecelakaan itu, kita bisa tahu. Okey, senang saja. That's why in your team, investigator, you should have multiple various person who are trained in different way. You may be your SHO. Somebody invite well-versed in chemist contohnya, ergonomics, whatever, from the management, from your safety committee, or maybe if you need from the outsource, from the agency, from the police and so on, from the bomba, whatever, put in your investigation. This is the keywords of your team. From that, you know, you can discuss, you identify the hazards. Then you have the proper recommendation based from your expertise in your team. Okay, and satu lagi yang saya boleh jawab last kali, okay. Apakah harus menggunakan semua metod? Tidak. Bergantung kepada metod-metod ataupun justifikasi yang objektif yang saya telah cakapkan tadi. Tujuan dia apa? Objektif kamu nak buat apa? Jenis dia apa? Hazard dia mana? Complexity of the work macam mana? Itu sahaja. Dan mungkin the last kali, kita perlu lakukan tinjauan berulang. Yes. Kalau any kind of changes, we need to review. Kalau tidak, kita just maintain. But remember, monitoring regularly, maintenance, observation, sangat penting continuous. Itu saja yang saya boleh jawab. Minta maaf yang lain-lain saya tak boleh jawab. Mungkin kita boleh communicate nanti. Okay, terima kasih, Pak.
Ya, terima kasih banyak Bapak Dr. Azwan. Ya, we are really say thank you very much for your time to share your knowledge and experiences for all of us about basic concept of occupational safety and health risk management. Okay, if there's any questions, I think it's the end of the session of our guest lectures. And please give a big applause to our speaker, Dr. Azwan.
Okay, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum. InsyaAllah.
Yeah.
Saya sertakan email saya.
Yeah.
Kalau ingin bertanya, mau study di sini, mau jadi SHO di sini, bekerja di sini, magang di sini, InsyaAllah.
Ya, ya kalau magang di Malaysia, apakah memungkinkan Bapak?
Ya, bukan saja magang, Pak. Boleh saja. Ada juga banyak tawaran kerja. Baru ini, saya pun hari ini pun baru dilantik sebagai curriculum assessor untuk satu lagi college university on safety, Murni College, insyaAllah. Dan petang ini pun ada interview become a qualified assessor untuk national punya ni. Mungkin saya boleh ke sana nanti. Mungkin ada collaboration, mungkin dari segi competency. Because in OSH, we need a competency for the students. Yeah.
Congratulations for your new position.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we hope we can collaborate.
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah, we can do more collaborate in the futures, and I think our students can take apprentice programs such as same like Acha, Rifa, and Susan in UTM, and we can go to NIOSH, Bomba, and extra in Malacca.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, we hope this pandemic will end soon, so we can start a new normal activity in the futures.
Ya, saya ambil kesempatan untuk mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih pada Bapak Automi kerana memberi peluang kepada saya untuk berkongsi. Walaupun tidak banyak tapi insyaAllah inputnya yang bernas kepada pelajar-pelajar Bapak. Dan saya ucapkan pada kesalam kepada rakan-rakan di sana, dosen-dosen di sana, khususnya di dekan Dr. Lina ya. Salam pada mereka dan juga kepada pelajar-pelajar saya nasihat begini. Dalam keselamatan kesihatan pekerjaan, KKN bagi KKN. Okey. KKP KKP, kesihatan keselamatan pekerjaan. Kita ada satu lagi kesihatan persekitaran, lingkungan, environmental health. Okey. Sebenarnya sangat dinamik. Okay, banyak peluang yang dapat anda, bahkan SHO kita pun NIOSH diterima di Indonesia, di Singapura, di Brunei, di Thailand, bahkan di Vietnam dan Myanmar pun ada ambil package kita, kurikulum kita. Dan anda boleh bekerja di sini ataupun di Indonesia, dan saya nampak di Indonesia macam Bapak Widodo banyak pergi membuat industrial hygiene. Sebenarnya ruang lingkup bukan saja di government, Pak. Sebenarnya di industri, anda boleh jadi seorang consultant. Macam saya freelance juga, walaupun saya mengajar di sini, saya freelance banyak banyak buat consultation, dan juga street dakwah in OSH. Kita jumpa orang, kita bercakap direct dan sebagainya. Penyampaian ilmu penting dan sebagainya. Memang gajinya agak lumayan, tetapi adakah gaji itu sama dengan kualiti kamu sebagai amanah yang dipegang? Karena di Malaysia, tanggungjawab SHO dalam akta ada 9, Pak, kena hafal. So ada 9 tanggungjawab, mungkin kamu boleh gitu. Itu sangat amanah. Bila kata amanah ni, benda yang kamu kena pegang, kamu tunaikan. Kamu tak boleh jadi pro majikan, kamu tak boleh jadi pro pekerja, kamu jadi orang tengah. That's why dia panggil kamu sebagai mediator, advisor at the middle. Ya, Pak.
Yeah. Once again, thank you very much.
Yeah.
This is very valuable for us. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experiences, and we hope we can meet again in the futures.
Ya, Bapak, saya pun akan jemput Bapak juga untuk beri online juga ya. Kita ada 3 kelas, Pak. Nanti ada 3 kelas nanti. Okey, ya, terima kasih.
Ya, Bapak. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention, and we can close this and guest lecture by recite hamdalah. Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Ya, saya minta dulu untuk mengundur, Pak, ya.
Ya, terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum semua.
Waalaikumsalam.